Good evening, Wakefield, and welcome to the June 22nd, 2020 Wakefield Town Council meeting. I'm calling this meeting to order. At attendance for the town councilors, it appears that we are all here except for Peter May. So we have 6 councilors in attendance. So at this point, I'd like to go to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, so we've done attendance. Sherry, public engagement. Do we have anyone since the last few moments we spoke?
No, no one has sent anything by email, and nobody's contacted me for Zoom.
Okay, great. Is there anyone in Zoom who wished to sign up for public engagement? I think I recognize all the names here.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Approval of the minutes. Do I need a motion, please, to approve the June 8th, 2020 Town Council minutes?
Well moved.
Second.
Moved by Paul, second by Jonathan. Roll call vote. Paul?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Irene?
Yes.
And myself, yes. So 6-0 unanimously. As we have a public hearing for the water and sewer rates at 6:15, but I think what I'd like to do, because both Tom Purcell and Chief Mike Sullivan are here, we can take them and talk about move their agenda item up. So that would be appointment to the deputy fire position. And I'll throw this over to Steve Mayo at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am pleased to announce my appointment of Captain Thomas Purcell as Deputy Fire Chief. This was a long process that was worked on with the fire union for over a year on the job description and the process of appointment. Because this is a civil service position, as all firefighter positions, including the chief, are in Wakefield, there is a civil service component and ranking of the candidates. Historically, Wakefield has utilized solely written civil service exams. In this case, it was agreed with the union that the process would include an assessment center through civil service in lieu of the written exam. Company was hired and the assessment was completed in late March. The assessment center includes written and practical exercises. The assessment center then ranked the 3 candidates that took the test. The scores were very close, and Captain Purcell ranked second on that portion of the interview process. And it's important to note that the town has no input at all in the scoring or ranking there. The second portion was the interview process. To me, this was the most important part, and as a key component of the job per the job description with the union and approved by town council more than a year ago, clearly stated that the deputy chief will assist with the development of goals, policies, procedures, and programs, work together with the chief of the department on the development and implementation of the department's long and short-term strategic planning, plan, organize, supervise, and coordinate activities of the fire department, ensuring safe and effective firefighting techniques and procedures, oversee the development and delivery of training programs and fire prevention operations. That was one of the key components in there. As part of the interview process, each candidate was asked to provide their resume as a letter indicating why they wanted to be deputy chief, and an entry plan. It was clear to me that while I believe any of the 3 applicants could do the job and do it well, a point that Chief Sullivan and I agree on, the interview process revealed that Captain Purcell displayed the best strategic vision for the future. As I dug deeper into the process, and it was no coincidence that the fact that Captain Purcell has invested more time in educating himself, because he did that he presented the best strategic vision. Captain Purcell is a credentialed fire chief of the Massachusetts Fire Service Commission. Captain Purcell is a graduate of the Chief Fire Officer Management Program through the Collins Center at UMass, which is a robust 14-week program, and has attended 3 years the National Fire Academy Executive Program in Maryland. A letter of recommendation for the program was submitted by Chief Sullivan on behalf of Mr. Purcell in 2013 for acceptance in the program. It is through these educational broadenings that Mr. Purcell learned of cutting-edge best practices, including community risk reduction as a gateway to the invention of the fire service culture. Really very interesting conversation in the interview how he will proposes on using data, collect and analyze data that we already have software for to better allocate resources as well as outreach programs. Really about prevention in different areas of the community. Wonderful discussion and wonderful vision that he had there. Mr. Purcell, Captain Purcell holds a master's degree in public administration, concentrating on emergency management and fire and emergency services. He holds all of the necessary credentials for the position and has 24 years of service in the Wakefield Fire Department, including the last 8 as a captain. This is a new position, and we utilized a new selection process in order to put the best candidate in the position to move Wakefield Fire Department forward in providing the best possible service to Wakefield residents and guests. I think the process was thorough and fair, and I strongly believe the best candidate has been appointed. And pursuant to section 4.2C of the charter, this appointment is subject to the approval of the town council.
Thank you, Steve. I just also want to thank the hard work that went into the process. I was a part of it way back when we had no idea who was applying, just thinking about the vision for the Wakefield Fire Department today and for tomorrow, just like we did with the police department. I think right now we are so blessed to have, we had 3 excellent captains that were in the mix for this, just as in the police department, we had excellent top level officers in the mix for deputy chief at that time. And then ultimately chief. So I just think, you know, I give Chief Sullivan a lot of credit for surrounding himself with such excellent people. And I've always thought that a great leader is as good as the people around him. And I feel like, you know, the Wakefield Fire Department will continue on a wonderful road. And we have good people to help lead us. It's a really important position to have, I think, and that can only complement what Chief Sullivan has already done for our department. And I want to congratulate Captain Purcell, now Deputy Chief Purcell, for earning this and in all the hard work he's done over the last several years to really present a resume that was quite striking. So well done. And Chief Sullivan, did you want to say anything?
Can you hear me?
I can, yep.
Yeah.
Okay, just checking. It's a working progress.
Yeah.
No, I just want to take a second and congratulate Deputy Purcell. I think it's been a long and exhausting process to come to this point, and we have lots of work to do, and I look forward to getting started as soon as I can, as we can.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chief. So at this point, Steve, we need a motion to ratify.
Yes, please.
So if someone could move to ratify the appointment of Captain Tom Purcell to Deputy Chief Purcell.
So moved.
Moved by Paul,
Second.
second by Jonathan. Any discussion? No. Okay, all in favor then. Paul,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
myself, yes. So well done.
Well done. Thank you. Congratulations, Tom.
Congratulations, Tom, and thank you so much, Chief Sullivan, as well.
Congratulations.
Well done, and it's a great day for our fire department, I believe, and our town. Okay, so Steve, I think we can we sneak in another one?
I think we can. I think we can. Ben is still with us, right? So also in this world of Zoom, Madam Chair, we also had to interview and hire a new building inspector. This is a very important position in the town. And we did go out and advertised, and kind of worried maybe during this time of year what was going on, but we did receive 25 applicants. 18 had the required state certifications, which is interesting why 7 even applied when we said don't apply if you don't have them. But they did anyway. Had a great screening committee, which was managed by our head of human resources, Amy Forziati. And that included Gail Conroy, Jen McDonald, Chris Pierce, Ann Waite, Joe Conway, Victor Santaniello, and then at the end I brought in Jack Roberto to get some of his insight on this. They did a tremendous job under kind of crazy Zoom circumstances as well. So they sent me 4 finalists, and I interviewed all 4 of them. One of the finalists was reportedly heading to Framingham, and I hope that he did get there because he was also a good candidate. But I've decided to appoint Benjamin DeCristoforo, who is still on our call, I believe, somewhere. I hope we didn't lose him.
Yeah.
There he is. Okay. Mr. DeCristoforo has served as the Revere Building Commissioner since 2005, where he was appointed by my good friend Mayor Ambrosino, who is now the city manager in Chelsea. He's been serving certified as a building commissioner since 2008. During his tenure in Revere, he was instrumental in developing their online permitting program. He's also developed a comprehensive database to field track and resolve citizen complaints. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Wentworth Institute of Technology and Construction Management. All of his references have checked out impeccably, as well as our inquiries into the State Building Commissioner's Office. We have some good contacts there, so we can also talk to them. He lives in Winchester, so he can reach town quickly in the case of emergency. And I know he has the technical expertise and temperament for this very busy position. Also, per Wakefield Town Charter, this appointment needs to be ratified by the council. I will tell you that I've enjoyed my conversations immensely with Ben, and he's ready to hit the ground running and has already come in and met with Jack and the staff a few occasions to kind of get everything going. And he's looking forward to starting, I think July 2nd, is that our date?
That is, yes. Yes.
Looking forward to having him come on board, and he knows we have a lot of busy projects. He's not afraid of them, having been in Revere. He's seen a lot of big projects there too. So I bring you Ben DeCristoforo as our building inspector.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve, and thank you so much for coming, Ben. We need a vote similar to the last one with regard to ratifying the appointment. If I could have a motion.
Second.
Moved by Julie, I think?
Yep.
One of us, yes. Seconded by Ed. Any discussion? John?
And just a quick observation. I, am really excited to hear from both of the appointments tonight, sort of an emphasis around the use of data in terms of improving and modernizing the services that we're providing to residents. It's really exciting to hear that as a concept that's becoming more and more part of how we operate as a town. And so, congratulations to both of you. And I think we're all eager to see what you do and see how you succeed here in Wakefield.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? No. Then we'll take a vote. Jonathan?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Irene?
Yes.
Myself, yes. So 6-0. Welcome, Ben. It's really nice to see you, and hopefully we'll meet you in person soon.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to it.
Excellent.
Congratulations, Ben.
And we have 0 time left, but Tommy, Deputy Chief Purcell, we didn't ask you to say anything, and I'm so sorry. That's my fault. If you wanted to say something for like 15 seconds.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Administrator Mayo, Chairman Santos, and the entire council. I'm prepared to serve. I'm ready. I'm really excited to get in there and hit the ground running and help the chief out. And thank you for putting your faith in me. Thank you again. And I look forward to working with Ben very closely. Congratulations.
Great. Thanks so much, and sorry about that. So now we are at 6:15, which is the public. We have a public hearing. So I need a motion to open the public hearing for the water and sewer rates for fiscal year 2021.
So moved.
So moved, Ed?
Second.
Seconded by Jonathan. In this, well, everything requires a roll call now, I forgot. I, myself, Jonathan.
Yes.
Ed.
Aye.
Julie.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Maureen.
Yes.
So we are all set for the hearing. Steve, do you want to take it, or should we send it right to Joe?
I think we're going to send it right over to Joe. And I think Joe's going to pop up a PowerPoint or WCAT is, however you want to do it, Joe.
I will in a moment. I just had a
Okay.
couple of things to say really quick.
Great.
So first off, Joseph Conway, Director of Public Works. With me on the call, I have Ann Waite, Public Works Business Manager, William Renault, Town Engineer, and Matt Abrahams from the Abrahams Group. So this is the fiscal year 21 rate setting, and the Public Works Water and Sewer Divisions is self-sustaining enterprise funds, delivering potable water to residents, supplying fire protection to infrastructure, and safely removing wastewater 24/7, 365. The water and sewer systems in Wakefield include over 200 miles of main piping in the street, 14 pumping stations, 1 treatment plant, over 800 hydrants, over 5,000 manholes and gates. We generate over 30,000 bills annually, and we have 17 budgeted employees. So tonight we'll be reviewing the Advisory Board of Public Works recommendation for the fiscal year 21 water and sewer rates. In the presentation to follow, you will see FY21 recommendations for water and sewer service charges, water and sewer rates, a septic disposal fee, and a manual read meter fee. So to give you a little background on our process, setting for this year actually began just about a year ago. During the rate setting process of fiscal 20, the advisory board gave Public Works some input and guidance on things they would like to see for the future. Equity and proportionality, an incentive to conserve, both of which have been discussed with the council and well received in the past. With the new administrative team in place at DPW, it provided an appropriate time to bring in an outside set of fresh eyes to perform an in-depth study of the enterprises. Some goals of the study were to seek efficiencies, institute best management practices were advantageous to both the users and the enterprise, and to plan for our future. An RFP was developed and the Abrahams Group was selected. Mark and Matt Abrahams of the Abrahams team brought a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience to the FY21 process. Some of the highlights of their resumes include members of the Governmental Accounting Standards Board Task Force on Service Efforts and Accomplishments. Mark is a co-chair of New England Waterworks Association Financial Management Committee, and they've done extensive work partnering with both the Department of Revenue, other municipalities, and the MWRA. At this time, can everybody hear me still?
Yes, if everyone could please mute themselves unless you want to say something during the public hearing. Thanks so much.
So I was going to say, at this time, I would like to introduce to the council Matt Abrahams of the Abrahams Group. Matt is going to walk us through the presentation that was supplied in the packet and review the advisory board's recommendation for fiscal year 21 water and sewer rates.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Joe. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. So I'm Matt Abrahams of the Abrahams Group. As Joe introduced me. Thanks, Joe, for that introduction. And we have the slides up on the screen. That means I don't have to share it myself. That's great. Thank you. So as Joe mentioned, we have a presentation for you this evening. We're just going to run through some slides that talk a little bit about the process that we used to come up with some rates recommendations. Ultimately, the advisory board of public works decided on one of our recommendations that we will show you momentarily. Also, we're going to review some numbers from a high level. We're not going to dive into the details that we dove into throughout this process, but you will see some numbers that we were reviewing as part of this process in a moment. And I guess we'll just dive into the slides. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So the first few slides talk about water, both from a current fiscal year perspective and also from an FY21 perspective and looking forward. I think it's important for everyone to understand that when we did this review, we weren't just looking at 1 year or even just 2 years. We were looking at a 5-year future 5-year look. So we were looking at 21 through 25, but we were also factoring in the current fiscal year, FY20, and what the financial impact of that looked like as well. So for FY20, for water, here are some statistics related to our review. We saw that there are about 8,500 water accounts currently. Consumption for FY20 that was billed is approximately 77 million cubic feet. That does not include about 2 million cubic feet of municipal consumption. Consumption was up 2.2% from last fiscal year, FY19, but it was down if you compare FY20 to FY18 by 2.8%. The current billing structure in place for water is a flat rate of $7.30 for 100 cubic feet of consumption, and that rate is up from $7.20 the last fiscal year, which was about a 1.4% increase. And there is a service charge of $18 on each quarterly bill issued, and FY20 was the first year that the service charge was in place for many years, since 2006. That was the last time that the service charge was on quarterly bills. So there was a significant gap there. And the service charge was the same amount back in 2006 as well, the $18 per quarter. And the charge of $18 per quarter does not cover fixed administrative costs of the Water Enterprise Fund currently. Next slide, please. Here's some financial numbers related to FY20 for water. The left-hand side towards the top shows the budgeted expenditures totaling 5.8 million. About 20%, 1.2 million of that is for personnel. The MWRA assessment of $2.6 million, which is about 45%. Debt, 500,000-ish, makes up about 9%. Capital, about 200,000, 3%. Indirect costs, about 680,000, 12%. And then other expenses, about 675,000 or 11%. And on the right-hand side is a breakdown of the revenues for FY20. These are projected because FY20 is not done yet. 5.7 million total, made up of user charges of about 5 million, 87%. The service charges that we just talked about totals about $520,000, 9%. Other revenues, 247,000, 4%. And retained earnings was appropriated $142,000 for FY20 as well. Down at the bottom, a quick nugget on retained earnings and what they were certified at. 581,000, the most recent certification. So that's as of July 1, 2019. And that amount is about 10% of the operating budget of 5.8 million. And with a projected surplus for FY20, we are projecting that retained earnings will increase by a small amount, but up to about 648,000. And that projection assumes that the expenditures will be spent to budget for FY20. And also it's based on what we're currently estimating user charges at for collections. Next slide, please. So we're still on a water slide, but now we're starting to look forward a little bit. So this slide talks a little bit about FY21 and also other years in our analysis. FY21 was the first full year for the appropriation of the labor union job classification study. And tied to that is a 12% increase in personnel costs for FY21. The MWRA assessment, and we have the final assessment now, is up 11% in FY21 over FY20. We took a look at what historically has happened for the MWRA assessments, and over the last 5 years saw that the average increase is 9.5% year to year. And in terms of looking forward, we know what the 21 assessment's going to be, but what do we use for 22, 23, 24, 25 in our analysis? We thought it made sense to carry the same projected increase, the average of 9.5% for FY22, and then started to decrease the projected assessment 2.5% per year downward, starting with FY23. And the main reason for that is the impact of the water treatment plant being back online in the town of Wakefield. So that will have an impact on the amount of water drawn from the MWRA, and therefore, presumably, the assessments will start to go down in the near future. The assessment is based on the prior year's flow share with MWRA. So whatever the flow share is this year, whatever Wakefield's flow share is this year will impact what the assessment is for the following fiscal year. And it's important to note that with the pandemic going on right now, what that could mean for the MWRA assessment next year. So if we think about Boston, for example, Boston is a very large water user for MWRA's largest water user by far. But Boston is not using water currently as it normally would, because basically it's been shut down for a few months for the most part. So most likely that's going to mean that their flow share goes down next year. Their flow share is this year going down. So it'll have an impact on the assessment for FY22, presumably. And therefore, that might mean that other communities' assessments may be going up a little bit more than usual for that reason. So that's just something to keep in mind. For debt, there's no change for FY21, and this is debt currently on the books. And we start to see a little bit of a decrease for FY22, and it goes down from there a little bit more. Capital is about $82,000 FY21, and there is a renewed capital investment plan in place for an additional $125,000 per year starting in FY22, ramping up to $500,000 by FY25. So we wanted to include that. It's important that there are capital investments being made in the near future, and we've included that in our analysis. Other capital projects, so some of the larger ones, we wanted to make sure we were paying attention to that as well. And there is currently a plan in place for a downtown mains project in FY24 for $4 million, and water tank removal project in FY25 for $3 million as well. And it is anticipated that these projects will be borrowed for. So we've projected debt related to those borrowings in our analysis. The town has done a good job taking advantage of 0% interest financing from MWRA, and also the grant program as well, the 75% grant, 25% loan program. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we have the same 3 slides for sewer. It's laid out very similarly. 8,200 accounts on the sewer side. Flow that has been billed in FY20, about 78 million cubic feet. Also does not include the municipal flow of about 2 million cubic feet. Flow is up 2.5% from FY19 and down 2.6% from FY18. The current flat rate is $11.20 per 100 cubic feet of flow, and that is down from the rate that was in place in FY19, which was $11.35, representing about a 1.3% decrease. And just like with water, there is a sewer charge in place on the quarterly bill. For sewer, it's $20 per bill, and it also has not been in place since 2006, just like with water. Next slide, please. So the same layout of slide here for FY20 financially. The budget for sewer is $9 million, about $9 million, made up of about 9% personnel. The assessment for MWRA, 6.6 million, is 73%. That makes up about 3%. Capital 4%, indirects 6%, and other expenses 5%. And projected revenues are about 8.4 million on the sewer side. User charges make up about 7.6 million of that. That's 90%. Service charges 7%, other revenues 3%, and retained earnings has been appropriated at 431,000 for FY20. Retained earnings were certified at just under $790,000. The most recent certification, that's 9% of the budget for FY20. Since then, $425,000 has been appropriated. So that lowers the available retained earning balance down to about $365,000, which is 4% of the budget. And we are projecting an FY20 deficit on the sewer side, which will presumably be provided for from available retained earnings, and that will lower the amount even lower. So that amount's looking pretty low after FY20 based on our current projections, but that also assumes that expenditures will be to budget for FY20, and it's based on certain collections assumptions as well. Next slide, please. So for 21 and the future years analyzed, again, there's a pretty sizable increase in personnel costs related to the classification study, job classification study. That's 12% in FY21. On the assessment side for MWRA, it's down slightly in FY21. That has to do with MWRA not moving forward with some capital plans they had in place because of the pandemic. So it was down. The sewer assessments are down, not across the board, but for many communities for FY21. Over the last 5 years, the average increase is 3.4%. And we used that as the projected increases year to year, FY22 to FY25. There's the comment about the deferred capital investments. For debt, there's a small decrease in FY21 and also a small decrease in 22 and 25. Part of the analysis, that's debt currently on the books. Capital, about $112,000 FY21, and just like with water, we've included the same plan for renewed capital investment of $125,000 per year, and starting in FY22, ramping up to $500,000 in FY25. And just like with sewer, the town is, with water, the town has done a good job taking advantage of the available MWRA funding. And there is an anticipated MWRA grant load to take place in FY22 on the sewer side, as well as 100% interest, 0% interest loan from MWRA in FY23. Next slide, please. So this slide represents and shows you the baseline scenario on water. And what's important to understand with the baseline scenario is we've included all of the projected expenditures and revenues in our analysis. However, we have not assumed a rate increase. So this represents the do nothing. If you weren't to do anything, this is what the financial picture looks like. And what it's showing is that there are enough retained earnings on the water side to get you through FY21, but not beyond that. Next slide, please. On the sewer side, same slide, but because of where we're projecting retained earnings to be at the end of FY20, there are not enough to even get through FY21 in the baseline scenario. Next slide, please. Thank you. Service charge. So we talked a little bit about the service charge already. At the top, you'll see the current service charges, $18 per quarterly bill for water, $20 per quarterly bill for sewer. And we took a look at updating the service charge, focusing on a methodology to try and recover what we've identified as fixed administrative costs for both water and sewer that are incurred whether a drop of water is used or not. So the way that we approached that was the town, DPW, determined what the total fixed administrative costs are for both water and sewer. And we decided not to try and recover those costs immediately with what we're proposing for the service charge this year for FY21, and decided to phase it in instead, starting with trying to recover 65% of those costs in FY21 and ramping it up 5% per year, presumably, moving forward until it's 100% recovery, which will, based on that time frame, it's looking at like it'll be like FY26 or 27 to get to 100%. And the methodology uses the American Water Works Association, AWWA standard equivalent meters methodology to determine a service charge by meter size. And the way that we've done it is all accounts that have meters 1 inch or smaller are paying the same amount. And then accounts that have meters larger than 1 inch are paying larger amounts, and the amounts increase as the meter sizes increase from there. And that methodology supports equity and proportionality, with the larger users paying more and the smaller users paying less. Next slide, please. So here is the service charge, the proposed service charge for water. The table at the bottom shows what the calculations are for the service charges per bill based on meter size and the methodology laid out on the prior slide. So you'll see in the right-hand column that the same charge is being proposed for meter sizes 1 inch and less, 1 inch and smaller. And then starting with 1.5 inch meters and going up from there, the charges increase from there based on the equivalent meter and service ratio that is in the middle column, the third column. Next slide, please. And the same methodology used for sewer. It's a different set of administrative costs to recover, about 1.2 million. I think water was 1.1 million. But the number of meters analyzed was a little bit different on the sewer side, but we made sure we paid attention to that. And you'll see that the 1 inch meters and smaller are paying the same, $21.40 per bill. And starting with the 1.5 inch meters is a larger amount, and it ramps up from there based on the ratio in column 3. Next slide, please. So this is a slide that talks generally about what objectives we are focused on as we move forward with the rate setting options. We wanted to make sure there was an emphasis on sustainable, more predictable financial future. So let's take a look at a few years worth as we're analyzing finances here. Let's be more proactive. Let's be less reactive moving forward. Let's assume that the users take advantage of the on-time payment discount of 10%. There is a large amount of users that do take advantage of that. So we wanted to make sure that we were mindful of that with the projections that we were calculating. Retained earnings. So retained earnings, as part of what we do as rate study analyses, we always focus on retained earnings because we want to make sure that retained earnings balance is healthy and able to withstand certain things happening in any given year. What if there's if it's a really wet year and you're not getting water usage at a level that you're used to? Well, retained earnings can help with that operating shortfall in that case. What if there's a large capital expenditure, an emergency expenditure on the capital side? Retained earnings can help mitigate that large expenditure. So it's always good to be focused on retained earnings. You want to make sure that there's a healthy balance. So as we're focused on rate setting options, we're also focused on what the retained earnings balance projects to be for each of those. So for each of the options that were presented, we were focused on a retained earnings balance that is 7.5% of the total budget in that year, but also knowing that there's a longer term goal in place of 10%, which would be consistent with town's policies for reserves. We want rates to be trending to cover annual capital improvement needs without more debt. So we were trying to avoid debt wherever we could with the projections that we were putting together. And we also explored creating tiers, knowing that there were a few things that we looked to that I guess motivated us to take a look at tiers. So the first thing is a part of Mass General Law that states that MWRA community shall have a base rate that shall be increased at an increasing block rate to fairly reflect the resource demand and consumption of high volume users of water. So the important piece of that language is to focus on the increasing block rate, which is what tiers would be. Also, MWRA and its withdrawal agreement with the town indicates that the town's user charges and accounting systems must meet a requirement for conservation-based rates. That's language that MWRA has. And also, we're just focused in general on equity and proportionality with consumption throughout the customer base. Next slide, please. So focusing specifically on the tier structure, this slide talks a little bit about that. And we ran through several options for what the tier structure could look like and ultimately settled on one that looks like this. And I know that there are a lot of numbers here, but for focus on the 3 columns to the left of this little table here. And that'll show you the 4 tiers that we came up with as the one that we thought made the most sense. And the Advisory Board of Public Works was supportive of this. And then the other data that's presented is breaking down water bills and consumption by tier based on the tiers out to the left. So you can see the percentage of bills by tier for both water and sewer, and you can see the percentage of usage and flow by tier for both water and sewer as well. And you'll see that there's a very large amount of bills that would be in either tier 1 or tier 2 with this setup. Adding those up quickly, that's about 80% of water bills. My math is good. And about 67%, 68% of water consumption would be in tiers 1 and 2 as well. And when we were focused on what those tier thresholds, I guess, would be, what the tiers would be set at, we were using a 65 gallons per person per day calculation for what water usage for a particular user might be. And using that would allow tier 1 to capture a person living alone, seniors, and other small users. Tier 2 would capture the average residential user and 3-person households as well. And with the breakout that we did for tier 3, that threshold allows commercial accounts and larger residential users to conserve to avoid tier 4. So we were definitely mindful of what the tier breaks would be, and we have reasons for each of those tiers. Next slide, please. Rate options review. So what was the process that was used to determine ultimately the rate that was sponsored by the Advisory Board of Public Works? Originally, we presented 6 options to the board for both water and sewer. 3 of those options were for the flat rate structure, which would mean that the town would continue to use the flat rate structure. And 3 of the options were for a tiered structure. Each of the 6 options for both water and sewer included the updated service charge recommendation, which we covered a few slides ago. For the flat rates to cover the FY21 budget, so what would the rate increase need to be for both water and sewer in order to cover FY20 operations? Those are the percentages that we came up with: 10.1% on the water side and 4.7% on the sewer side. The tier structure options allowed for a smaller increase for the small and average user, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. And for various reasons, we decided to focus on only the tier structure options. So basically what that means is once we got further along the process, we stopped focusing on the flat rate options. Then a 4th tier structure option was introduced later, and ultimately the board decided on recommending option 6, in part because it has the smallest impact on the average residential user of all the options that were presented. Next slide, please. And here are the options themselves. And I know the slide's very busy. I will walk you through it. So what's important to focus on here is that FY21 would have the tier structure in place, and the tier structure is off to the right in the blue shaded cells. The rates themselves were set using what is found in the 3rd bullet, where it says FY21 rate changes. We wanted to keep tier 1 the same, meaning there would not be a rate change for tier 1 users. They would continue to be billed at the $7.30 rate that they are being billed, that everyone is being billed today. For tier 2, an increase of 5.8% over what is being billed today, the current rate, 11.6% in tier 3, and over 23% for tier 4. The top table on the left shows the 5-year plan that was laid out. So tier 1, in order to hit the 7.5% retained earnings projection that we were focused on by FY25, that was the rate plan that we came up with as a way to get there based on these tier changes. So in addition to the tier changes that we are recommending, there would also be a presumed increase in each of the next 4 fiscal years to get there of about 7.7% per year. And we included in the bottom table what the impact financially per bill would be based on these rate changes that are being proposed here per year. So you can compare the current bill to the projected bill for each of those years. And that is a quarterly bill amount. That is not a yearly bill amount. And I don't think it's necessary to harp on this slide because we do have a summary slide momentarily that will show you these numbers again. So let's move to the next slide. So for sewer, same setup of the slide and same methodology used as I just described for water. You see the proposed tier structure and proposed rates in the blue. For the rate changes, 0% tier 1, that was important as well. We kept that the same, 4.5% for tier 2, 9% tier 3, 18% tier 4. And longer term, 4.5% per year gets you to trending towards that 7.5% that we mentioned for retained earnings. And then again, the example users in the table at the bottom. Next slide, please. So here is a summary slide, which kind of ties everything together that we just covered on the prior two slides, but it shows both water and sewer together. You have the tier structure in the blue with the rate percent changes and the rate itself, along with what the discounted rate would be for those that are able to take advantage of that for both water and sewer. And then down in the bottom table, we have the current bill without a discount and with a discount. So that would be water and sewer combined, plus the FY21 projected bill for both water and sewer separate, as well as combined, as well as with a 10% discount and a percent difference change if we were to compare the FY21 bill to the FY20 bill, the current bill, which is FY20. And when I mentioned earlier about the Advisory Board of Public Works focused on this option as opposed to others, and I said that it had the smallest impact on the average user, we were focused on that second row down when we were comparing those, where it says 2,000 cubic feet. That 2.9% difference was the lowest of all the options that were reviewed. And I believe that is the last slide, and it makes sense maybe for us to stay on this slide. So I'll welcome any comments or questions at this time.
Sorry, I can't, let me just get the gallery view. It's hard to see who's raising their hands with everything. With the screen share. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I don't see any of the counselors have any questions or comments.
Jonathan and Julie have their hands up.
Oh, that's funny. It's not, let me see. Oh, I'm sorry. With the squish screen, I see it now. Jonathan, Julie, and Ed have their hands up. So Jonathan, I'll go with you first. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Matt, Joe, and everyone for the presentation. I appreciate all of the work that went into this and all of the efforts to look at different scenarios, and I do think sort of conceptually, I really like the idea of moving towards a tier-based approach. First of all, that I think potentially offers some relief to ratepayers who maybe are living alone, some of our seniors in town and so forth. I think that's a great objective. And from a conservation standpoint, I think, again, conceptually, I'm very comfortable with the idea of a tiered approach. I do wonder, and as I look at some of the numbers that you've presented, well, certainly I think a lot of us appreciate sort of the small increases for the average residential ratepayer. The increases that you're looking at, particularly in that example of a tier 4 ratepayer with a larger meter are kind of eye-popping. When you're talking about, $1,000 a quarter. you know, when you combine all of those pieces together between the water rate, the sewer rate, and the service charges. And so I'm wondering, just to get an idea as to who that impacts. I know you shared sort of the numbers of ratepayers, but could you give us some examples of kind of what's sort of the median ratepayer, I guess, that would fall into that category, you know, where they'd be looking at a 20% increase in the coming fiscal year?
Sure, so I can touch on that. So two that I can think of right now that jump out that was discussed by the advisory board. One example is a large scale industrial manufacturing facility that uses a lot of water to make their product, but they also use a lot of water to implement dust control. Another one being a 60+ unit commercial apartment building. So in some of the theory like that, when the advisory board reviewed it, they said, you know, in some of their thinking that, you know, the two roommates living alone paying $19.16, you would take a 60 unit property like that and divide that by the service charge, for example, you know, by unit, they're paying substantially less. And it doesn't, you know, complete equity there, but it at least bridges some of the gap where before, you know, the single person living alone was paying the same thing as these types of facilities.
Got it. So they still, if in your example of like the 60 unit apartment building, they'd still be seeing from a percentage standpoint a 20% increase if you took that overall amount for the building and divided it out. However, the sort of the theory goes that because they've been paying effectively sort of a lower share of that service charge than they were beforehand, that gets them closer to sort of payment parity with you know, someone who has their own meter. Is that the thinking there?
That was the intent behind that.
Okay.
To try to even that gap, you know, as close as you could, also with trying to be as reasonable as you could as well.
All right. And were there, and I apologize, I know the information was in the packet and I just can't remember which option was which. Were there any options where you looked at sort of moderating that redistribution over a couple of years?
Yes, so the advisory board looked at a multitude of different options with that. So we thought that given the economic times and things like that, that, you know, 100% cost recovery wasn't practical. It wasn't something that we wanted to do. Right now we're in about a 50% cost recovery. So this would be a move to start trending in the right direction while keeping it as minimal as possible. And again, I think in the first slide too, it mentioned that one of the goals of this whole process was to be as stable as we could be and be predictable. So this is just a step in that direction.
I guess maybe just to reframe the question, I was thinking more around the tiering of rates across those 4 tiers. And again, I apologize, I can't remember exactly which option was which, but were there any options that sort of moderated the redistribution in year 1 and kind of spread that piece of it over? I understand the increase in the service charge to cover the administrative and fixed costs.
Yeah. Joe, I could speak to that. So you're referring to the rates themselves in the tiers?
Correct.
Yes, okay. So that was something that the Advisory Board of Public Works actually requested of us. We had multiple meetings with them on the options, and they did request, they had a similar reaction and similar questions as you're asking right now. And they did request an option where the differential in the rates per tier was less than what we showed in the option tonight. And they did review that option, but ultimately decided to go with the one that was presented tonight, mainly because of the impact on the average residential user. If the differential's less for the higher tiers, then that means that the rate increase that we have for tier 2, for example, would be higher. And that would mean that the average residential user would be paying more with that option. So ultimately, they ended up choosing the option that we presented, in part because of that reason.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Julie.
Or, thank you. Obviously, there's a lot of work put into this. I have a number of questions. Before we start getting into the fees, and while I recognize it's a small percentage, why is it that the town's sewer and water usage is not billed?
So that would cover things like irrigation for the common, the public safety building isn't billed, things like
Okay.
some fire protection training, water use, and things like that.
I guess I don't quite understand why it's not billed, and I think you'll see where I'm coming from on this is anything that's not billed is not conserved by definition. And so I do have some concerns over town not billing and thus probably not tracking and not being incentivized to conserve. So I have a concern about that, although I recognize that it's not a huge percentage. Matt, you kind of suggested there's something called conservation-based rates and glossed over it. Can you just give me a little more information on that?
Yes. So if you think about the tier structure is designed to have different rates and different tiers. So if you use a certain amount of water and you end up in tier 3, you are paying at a higher rate than if you did not end up in tier 3, if you're in tier 1 or tier 2. So part of the design, part of the reason for a tier structure is to promote conservation, knowing that you will pay more if you use more.
And that's great. And that's kind of what I was just referring to. In terms of the fees, though, are not based on usage. They're based on the size of the meter. Is that correct?
So the rates and the tiers themselves are not, there's no relation to the meter size there. The meter size comes into play with the service charge.
That's what I'm talking about.
Not with the flow base.
That's what I'm referring to as fees. So the service charge is based on the size of the meter, not on the usage of water.
Correct. The proposed service charge is, yes, not the current service charge. Yes.
Right. And was it looked at to try to make, make this sustainable in terms of covering costs more on a usage basis than on a meter basis? I mean, I realize that there would probably be fluctuations year over year, but once again, I feel like it's more of a conservation incentive.
So we didn't run any options with the current service charge in place, which I think is what you're getting at with your question. No, once we started talking about the potential of updating the service charge and going with the AWWA methodology that was mentioned.
Yeah.
We didn't turn back from there. It was every option had that in there.
Councilor Smith-Galvin, if I can just jump in for a second.
Sure.
So that's something too, a lot of the mindset was predicated on flow percentages and bill proportion. So that's something, everything that's presented for fiscal 21, there's a lot of unknowns for fiscal 22 and the years ahead. One of the challenges with this was, well, it was absolutely the right decision for the town to push back due dates on bills and not charge any penalties and interest till July 1st. It made it very hard to predict where we were going to land. So we had to basically pick, what, I'm not going to say it's our worst case scenario, but something that, where we didn't meet where we thought we were going to project to before the COVID impact happened. So at this point in time next year, if the numbers tell us something different, then we can work with the advisory board to dial that into, the best possible scenario, whether it's conservation, keeping the rates, financially low. So, it's something that we can obviously evaluate as time goes on and really dial in specifically as we get more data on it longitudinally.
Okay. And I guess my final would just be a comment more than anything. It makes me a little uncomfortable to be talking about this kind of in the face of COVID and so much uncertainty for the people who will be paying these bills, particularly since we had no service charge before last year. We went 14 years without a service. Seems like at this point in time to be ramping up, I wouldn't even say it's aggressively, but significantly, it's just something to think about. And I haven't even processed it myself, but I guess I'll leave it with that for now. Thank you very much.
Ed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know that in years past, we've always talked about the, I guess, call it dilemma that we have in that if we don't use enough water, then we end up in some ways being penalized in terms of assessments and rates. Joe, can you maybe speak a little bit to that piece of it?
So there's a couple of things that play into that. Obviously, the more water we use, the more water we bill. And there's a certain percentage of that that goes towards capital improvements and, you know, retained earnings and things like that. But to the contrary to that, the DEP sets a water conservation standard that communities are encouraged to meet. And if we don't work towards that, there could be some, you know, intervening, you know, from their perspective to try to work with us to meet the conservation standards. So it's a balance between conservation plus consumption to try to meet in the middle and, you know, seek some sort of level between the two.
Because I am wholly in support of the idea of getting us to the retained earnings, the 7.5%, you know, and I'm just wondering if we're being a bit too ambitious with trying to achieve that by fiscal year 2025. And in thinking about it, I know that we seem to be using Boston as the baseline because that seems to be the major, I guess, consumer of water, and you're saying that may have shifted due to COVID. I'm just thinking in practical terms about households here in Wakefield, and we've had folks that have been ostensibly home, you know, and hunkered down for a number of months now. So undoubtedly, there's more water consumption that has, you know, taken place in single residences than say office buildings or other places. I mean, you're flushing toilets more at home than you did when you were off to work all day. You know, you're using water just generally more than when you were out and about. And so I have a real concern about the fact that residents in town, just simply by, you know, by living in this you know, pandemic world, are faced with having to consume more water out of necessity, not necessarily by choice, which is inherently going to drive up their bills. And add to that the fact that we're talking about increases. I don't know if some households, even, you know, when we hear a lot about this new normal, whatever that will look like, if more people end up working from home more often, or there's just, you know, less kind of activity away from the home, then those consumption levels could continue to go up, and the tiers could shift. And people could, I'm not saying that people could find themselves in a single family home in the 60 unit plus, you know, range, but I think we already have a reality that residents are paying more in water and sewer right now because usage is up by necessity. And I'm really concerned about anything that we're doing that's going to increase costs to something that inherently is already going to have higher consumption based upon our current, you know, our current environment, what we're living in. So I'm reluctant to see us go up to the target of 7.5% by fiscal 25 in light of this. And I'm reluctant to see us with increases, understanding that consumption is already necessarily going to be up these days and for the foreseeable future. And that's going to have a real impact on people's wallets at a time that I think is probably the worst time for them to be feeling it.
Absolutely. So the 7.5%, there's been some rumors that the Department of Revenue is going to come out with some guidance on enterprises and retained earnings, and that 10% was going to be the threshold that they would show as a best management practice. Obviously, we want to make sure that we have enough to cover, you know, a large-scale infrastructure failure. So the 7.5% is just a goal. Like I said, with the COVID-19, it's been very hard to dial in exactly where we're going to be at the end of this year, as we're still seeking, you know, small amounts of payments are coming in the door every day. So that's something that could be completely different come next year. But outside of year one for fiscal 21, the out years are more of just kind of a financial outlook, obviously predicated on what happens with however the new normal tends to look. And, you know, if things change substantially, then all of that could be completely different the next time that we sit down and have a conversation like this. So that was completely in the advisory board's mind. If I could quote one of the members, this person said that they're going to do whatever it is to take the overwhelming majority and impact them the least. And we're looking at a flat rate increase across the board of almost over 10% in just the water to meet the budget. And with the tier structure that they developed, they took approximately 50% of the ratepayers and gave them marginal increases.
I guess with that too, I was looking at that, and indirect costs were about 12%, other expenses were about 11%. So it seemed like about 23% of that was those two categories alone. So if, rather than just looking at it as a percentage, I guess if we're looking at how can we perhaps get down the total budget here, it seemed like the administrative going up at 12%, which was a significant increase, right, year over year. And I understand that there were different criteria that were in place now, but is there anything that we can be doing on that end to achieve a smaller budget? I know that we can't necessarily control consumption or usage, but are there other ways that we can tackle the budget piece so as to not have such a significant impact on the majority of consumers?
Absolutely. So anything that we could do, obviously there's the fiduciary responsibility on our part to do our best to make sure that any cost incurred is, as efficient as possible. Unfortunately, not in time for this round, but we were able to benefit from the municipal solar grant, which is on the water department now and live. So that would directly offset, some of the budget there in electricity. And, depending on how well the sun is shining down on Broadway, we could actually net some payment from that from generation into the grid. So we're unraveling every opportunity that we can to make sure that any savings we can see, we can pass on to the end user.
Thank you.
Paul Tanaka.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a couple of questions because I'm trying to follow a couple of things that I heard mentioned. The 7.5 that we're talking about right now in regards to the target RE, did I hear someone say that you wanted to get that up to at least 10%? Is that true?
That would be the goal, and we believe that the Department of Revenue is going to come out with some guidance as that will be a best management practice.
In over how long of a course of time do you think it's going to take us to get to 10%?
Whatever is the most financially responsible. So we used the out years in this presentation as sort of a benchmark. I mean, we could have given a presentation on a 10, 15, 20-year plan. We just took a smaller bite at the apple. If it's 5 years, it's 5 years. If it takes 7 or 8, it takes 7 or 8. I guess there's a lot of questions that are unanswered right now. We don't know exactly how things are going to look. So we've got to evaluate that day by day and make sure that any decision we make is sound and the most financially responsible that we can.
Okay, thank you. And another question right now. So I'm looking at the recommendation chart from the Advisory Board of Public Works. And I'm Joe Average. You're looking at your water tier rate. Am I to assume correctly that if I use only 900 cubic feet, I'll be charged, according to this chart, $18.50 per liter. Is that correct?
Correct. Flow-based would not see an increase for you in given that scenario.
So just in that same scenario, if I spike to say 1,500, would the rate being charged still stay at $18.50, or would it recalculate for the amount of usage between 1,000 and 2,500?
Correct. So every user in the town would see between 0 and 1,000 at that $18.50 rate. Then as users move into the next tier, they would see it applied at the next tier's rate.
Only for the usage?
Correct. Only for that tier.
Only for the usage in that tier. Yes.
Okay, so it would be only the 500 cubic feet will be charged at the higher rate.
Correct.
And out of all the scenarios, and I went through a lot of them, do you think that this is going to be the best option for the citizen in regards to a rate, or is this the best option for the town in regards to the RE?
No, so I think RE was just a goal. obviously we all remember some of the infrastructure issues we had down in the Greenwood area. So when something like that happens, we want to make sure that we have enough to cover ourselves without having to come to the town for free cash or having to do a borrowing to pay for some of the upgrades. So this was more to A, align with Mass General Law, B, our withdrawal agreement with the MWRA, and then C, make the impact on the ratepayer, the end user, the smallest extent possible, and try to achieve, a little bit of progress in working towards our goal. Because some of the other things too that I don't really know if we picked up on, we have some large water infrastructure projects coming. We also have the sunset of some sewer programs from the MWRA that allow us to do some infrastructure work. So we have 2 phases left of the loan program where we can essentially get, I'll use round numbers, we can get $1 million worth of work done for a $250,000 investment. To this point, we have not seen anything official on letterhead saying that's going to continue. And if that doesn't continue, we need to build a mechanism to still improve some of our underground network. So there's a lot of moving pieces to this, and it's a very holistic, 10,000 foot look, but this is all building towards those, accomplishing some of those goals and being prepared for whatever the future may bring.
Thank you, Joe. So my last question, I promise, this one's back to Matt, because Matt said he was the mathematician. So based upon our current rate of water and sewerage on a 1,500 cubic foot bill, what would that person pay right now?
I think if we go to the summary slide, we show that for 2,000.
Yeah, so we could just split the difference of those 2 numbers probably.
So right now it would be probably what, about 130 on a 1,500 cubic foot?
Are you looking for water only, sewer only, or combined?
Combined.
No, it'll be more than that.
Ryan, is there any way we could share the presentation? I think it's the summary slide just up on the screen. I think it might clarify things. Thank you.
Okay, so explain this to me real quickly without going too long. If my bill, if I use 1,500 cubic feet, 1,500 cubic feet, what would my bill be right now this year? Or this quarter, let's just put it that way.
Trying to find it for you.
And then I would like to know what it would be if we use this, the recommendation from the Advisory Board of Public Works. What would it be starting the next quarter?
All right. All right, so your water charge would be $109.50 today. You gotta add $18 to that, so $127.50. And your sewer charge would be $188. So that was $315.50. Is that what it was?
That's what I'm getting. So what would it be if we used the new tier plan? What will it increase to?
I have it as, I don't know if I gotta confirm the rates. 1 sec, please.
Yep.
So the numbers I'm providing are without the discount. Is that okay? Or would you like to? That's okay.
Yep.
All right, I have it as 322.70.
And of course, as we just agreed, that's without the 10% discount.
Correct.
So that means we're talking a $6.80 increase over last year
Per bill.
per bill, per quarter at $1,500.
Yep.
Matt, I thank you. I just wanted to have an idea of if I'm talking to someone in lay terms, if I'm not following it 100% on what I'm seeing, it's easier for me to give them a hard number and saying, this is what you paid now. This is what you would anticipate paying next year for the same amount of water. They would get a better understanding of that if I talk to them. So it'd be easier for me to explain. But thank you for looking that up for me. I'm sorry I took so much time, so much of your time. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Of course. Do any other counselors have their hands up?
And can I just ask a couple of questions?
Of course. Yep. I just saw you, Maureen. Yep.
No worries. It's actually a question, I think, for Anne and for Joe, and we touched upon it. Some more people are working from home, and I just didn't hear if like what you could report back. So I'm wondering, are people not paying their bills, having a harder time meeting their bills? And then, like we talked about Boston, also our businesses in town have not been using water. So that manufacturing company that you talked about, Joe, obviously has been at least closed for a couple of months. And so I'm just wondering, you know, kind of an update, regardless of the rates, of just how payments have been for people in Wakefield the last 3 months, and then what you guys kind of anticipate through the end of the year.
Sure. So one of the things that we always knew, but it forced us to take a hard dive. 95% of the bills that come in take advantage of the discount, which is an outstanding number. I feel like, at least for myself, speaking personally, the discount to this water and sewer rate was as Wakefield as the 4th of July parade. It was one of those things. It's an institution. It wasn't going anywhere, certainly if the advisory board had any say in it. The last flow percentage reports I looked at were down 1% year to date. We're a little bit slower this year in the billing. We believe that we'll end up probably pretty close to where we were projecting sometime around November, December, although we might not know exactly where we land until probably sometime in the middle of July based on everything. Did I miss anything, Anne? Hold on, Anne, you're on mute.
I'm muted, Anne.
I'll do it again.
Unmuted?
Yes.
You're good.
So the people, as Joe said, did take advantage of the discount, which was great. Since the discount date stopped, which was at the beginning of June, collections have been very sporadic and very low. Some days, actually, we didn't take in any money towards the collection. So because it's a time we're not sure of, we don't have any history to figure out, well, everyone will pay on the 30th. We did send out demand notices without a demand, just, I think, more of a reminder to have people pay. Mm-hmm. And we did get some activity today with people calling saying, oh, I thought I paid this. So we're hoping that those reminders will get people to pay and we'll finish out the year strong.
Are you all set, Maureen? You're muted.
Yes, no, thank you. And then just I'm pointing to where Steve is on my screen. Steve, if we have folks who have issues paying because of this new economy and new normal, then we have the emergency fund. And so I hope, you know, Anne and her folks kind of reach out to you and your folks if people need help getting in those payments.
And we've had quite a few. Now I'm muted. Oh,
You're good.
We've had quite a few reach out via the emergency fund, so yes.
Great. Ed, do you have another question, or is your hand still up?
I just had a quick follow-up actually for Matt or Joe. I know that Paul had asked about the consumption up to 1,000, 2,000, et cetera. if you figure like, let's say like a family of 4, maybe they have irrigation, maybe they have a pool, maybe not. Can you just give a sense of, you know, when we're talking in these numbers with 2,000 say versus 5,000 versus 10,000, where does say, I'll call a quote unquote normal household of 4 fit in, and how does that compare to say like a, you know, a senior, you know, living by him or herself in terms of consumption generally?
I believe in one of the first slides, we've identified as, you know, the senior living alone falls somewhere in that first tier, 0 to 1,000 typically. I believe the family of 3, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt.
Yeah. So we did talk about the
Somewhere in
family of
between
3.
tier 2 and tier 3.
Yep. So we have the family of 3 within tier 2. So most likely a family of 4 will be in tier 3, actually almost definitely, and family of 5 as well. Some of the larger users in, you know, some of the larger, some of the families that use more water will find themselves towards the top of tier 3, presumably, with the possibility of going to tier 4. So there's definitely a piece there. If they wanted to make sure they were consuming to stay in tier 3, they had the ability to do that.
I'm just concerned about seeing that jump because it's a pretty significant percentage increase as you're going up through. Yep. And I'm just thinking about some families that could be, say, maybe like on the cusp of that, you know, and then it jumps considerably.
Yep.
And again, I think inherently, when we're talking about people just consuming more, even a 2-person household is probably consuming closer to, you know, a 3.5-person household these in recent months, just by virtue of being home so often and presumably for the foreseeable future. So I'm afraid that all of these, you know, projections are going to be skewing upward. And I appreciate all that the advisory board has done, and that you both have done as well, because I know you've obviously done a deep dive into this, so I'm not going to pretend to have analyzed to the same extent, but these just kind of are front of mind questions.
Mm-hmm.
Julie, did you have a follow-up?
Just a clarification, Joe. So we're only voting on FY21. The others were just projections, and we can revisit this next year depending on where we are.
Absolutely. So the outliers is more of a transparency piece to show, you know, based on this approach, here's where we see things. It's a forecasting model.
Okay. And I appreciate the work that went into it. It's very helpful. I just wanted to be clear on what I'm
Yep. If we sat down and looked at this in September, it could look completely different. It's been day to day.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Great work.
Jonathan, did you have a follow-up? Unmute.
Sorry about that. My little button wasn't working. I just to follow up on Councillor Dombrowski's question, and it may be that I'm having trouble following the math. So on page 14, you talk about 8.7 cubic feet per person per day is sort of the, you know, kind of the average usage. And I'm assuming that's, I don't know if that's average residential, assuming no irrigation, no pool, things like that, or if that's kind of inclusive of all of those things. But am I doing the math right if I multiply that out for a family of 4, you know, the 8.7 times 4 times 365, I get usage at about 13,000 gallons, which would put them like well in excess of tier 4. Am I thinking of that right? Or is there something with my calculation that isn't working out?
Are you assuming a year with that calculation or a quarter?
Sorry, a year. Okay, so that's divide by 4, thank you. All right, but so we'd still be talking about 3,000, what is that, cubic feet. Okay, so they'd still be, if you were a family of 4 with average usage, you'd still be pretty squarely in tier 3, right?
Yes, most likely.
Yeah, so I guess that's where my concern comes in is, again, as others have pointed out, and as I raised in the first question, there's a really big jump from tier 2 to 3, and I'm very supportive of the idea of sort of a graduated rate schedule and think we should be encouraging conservation. But, you know, if you have no sort of ability to kind of reasonably get to, you know, that sort of break point between tier 2 and tier 3, if you're a family of 4 or 5, that just feels like that's a pretty large burden for a lot of folks in the community. You know, I understand that, you know, there's sort of a limit in terms of our discretion here, because the rates that we get from MWRA are set. You know, our internal costs in terms of our staff are basically set. Those are contractually negotiated. It just feels to me that we're creating a tier structure that really may catch a lot of people and a lot of families in Wakefield in a place where they're spending a lot more than I think they would have anticipated.
Is there, councils are all so far all set and we can move to the public? Do any members of the public have any questions, as this is a public hearing? If you do, you can do the raise hand function or simply indicate that you have a question, as long as you identify yourself by name and where you live. No? Very good. Okay. Joe, just to ask a couple of questions. People can estimate, the average household may not know what their usage is, but you can go online and see bills from all your accounts.
You could certainly inquire with us, and we could get you whatever information that you wanted.
Great.
There will be some updates to our website to help people kind of manage their conservation, excuse me.
Yeah.
One of the trouble with rolling that out completely was we needed to make sure that we didn't put the cart before the horse. We went through all the process of setting the rate, and now we can actually update some things. So you'll see one of the things we plan on adding to our bill is your average daily consumption, printed right out there, right in the right-hand corner.
That's great.
You can kind of watch that. We've been working with Jen up in content and communications to develop, you know, some calculators and estimators, as well as the ability to read your meter head, to try to give a little bit of the self-service guide to some people that might want to, you know, be able to be mindful of those things and pay attention to it more.
Sure.
So all of those things will be changing in the very short future. Okay. But if anybody has any questions, I mean, we're here to serve the public, so we'll answer them to the best of our ability and make sure that, you know, we take the time out for anybody to understand whatever it is that they may be inquiring on.
Excellent. And I, you know, I would follow Ed's point that I love having the multi-year projection, but this is such an extraordinary time. So I appreciate, you know, us being able to revisit this next year.
Yep.
So.
And Madam Chair, if you don't mind, it's just a quick comment related to that. So when we do analyses for communities like this, we always do the multi-year look with the recommendation that it gets reviewed every year, because even in a non-pandemic world, the assumptions change, and it's worth looking at every year.
Great. Thank you very much, Matt, and thanks for the presentation. Okay, so Steve, I'm going to defer to you to help me and Joe lay out what votes we need.
Yes, we probably need to have 4 votes. One would be the water rate per 100 cubic feet, and that includes the service charge. One would be the sewer rate per 100 cubic feet, including the service charge and sewer flat rate. Sewer flat rate we didn't really talk about, but that's for someone that just has sewer and has a well, so we charge them something, and that flat rate is $370 a quarter. And the manual read meter fee of $50 per quarter, which I don't think we have too many of that left. And septic disposal rate, people actually will use our system to dispose of you know, their septics, and we charge them $110 to come in. We charge them per 100 cubic foot at the current sewer rate, so they pay a sewer rate, and they have to pay for off hours overtime in case that happens. Okay. So I guess, Joe, I got those all?
Yeah, so Steve, if I could just comment on that really quickly. So the sewer flat rate that's proposed, that's for someone that uses well water for their home, right, discharges into the municipal sewer system. They have the option of metering it and being based on flow consumption. There are some people out there that do not choose that. So what that number represents is the American Water Works Association average consumption multiplied by our rate. The manual read meter fee, that was something that Director Stinson had put in place. We've been going through a project where we were trying to change a lot of water meters, and there were some that were, we were constantly having to visit. This was put in as a mechanism to try to encourage, the conversation with us. To date, we've never used this. It's not something that we're fans of, but it's there as a break glass in case of emergency, in case we run into a problem. And then the update to the septic disposal rate, nothing has changed except for the Collins rate got rid of the old job classification rank that was listed last year. So this would just be to update that language.
Okay. Steve, do I need to read the actual rates?
I think you could say as presented, and you could take this all as one vote if you want, Madam Chair.
Okay.
We'll record them separately, though.
Perfect. Okay. And just for everyone, we are now live streaming. That was put back up during the presentation. So we need a vote on the water rate per 100 cubic feet, including service charge for tiers 1 through 4, including the water service charge delineated by meter size. We need a second vote on the sewer rate per 100 cubic foot, including service charge and the sewer flat rate that Joe Conway just explained. Also, a sewer service charge is part of that second vote, according to the meter size. The third vote is the manual read meter fee, $50 per quarter, which Joe has said they've never had to use, but in an emergency, that would be, could be used. And vote 4 is the septic disposal rate, facility opening fee, disposal cost per 100 cubic feet, and off hours disposal rate if needed. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Okay. Can someone please make that motion as stated and as presented? One of my counselors. I don't hear Julie, but I can see your mouth.
I make that motion as stated and read.
Seconded.
Julie, seconded by Maureen. All in favor and going around. Myself, yes. Ed?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jonathan?
No.
Paul? Donaco?
Hold on. Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Okay, so the vote is 5 in favor, 1 against.
Madam Chair, this was just for one year, right? This is just for
Yes.
21.
This is setting for 21, yes. And I would really encourage, and I'm going to do it myself, encourage homeowners to dig a little deeply on your own usage, and so you can educate yourself and see how much you're using and understand how some of these rates might affect you. I'm a little bit terrified at the amount of showers my teenagers take every day right now. So you've got me nervous, Joe. But I don't want stinky teenagers, so.
So, Madam Chair, so if we find that the rate based upon the tiers has a too dramatic of an increase on, say, a family of 4, we can make a significant change come for when we set the 22 water rate, correct?
We can certainly look at that again. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Actually, Madam Chair,
Yes.
can I just ask that be reported back to us next year at this time, so we have some really hard analysis of what things look like for this year in fiscal 21? Because I think that would be important to help to inform us, which is a really deep dive into the numbers.
Absolutely. I'm sure Joe will do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Matt, and Bill for, a clean presentation on stuff that is not that easy to follow for the layperson. Okay, next item 7, Wakefield Community Partnership. John Ross, I think this is you, unless I'm wrong.
Update.
You skipped over 7. You went right to 8, but that's okay.
Oh, no, you know what? I'm sorry. I printed up an old agenda. Nope, my fault. Sorry, John. You'll have to take a little bit of time there. I did not grab the revised agenda. So there we go. Item 7, COVID-19 updates. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, we need to close the public hearing.
Yes.
Yep, sorry about that. Could someone move, please, to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Moved by Ed, second by Paul. All in favor? Ann, yes. Ed, in favor?
Aye. Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Paul, I heard your aye. Maureen?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Public hearing is closed. Now we go to the COVID-19 updates.
Thank you. Very quickly, Madam Chair. So our numbers in Wakefield have been steady since Saturday, 313 cases since this pandemic started, and that's about 1.2% or so of the population. I think talking with Ruth this afternoon, she's actually very pleased that there hasn't been any uptick, since people have started going out and what have you, and more of that. So we're pleased there. We are still continuing to do contact tracing, and we were using a lot of the school nurses, wonderfully so, because they weren't there in school, because the kids weren't there. And right now they are out of school, so the school nurses don't work in the summer. So we are utilizing the Board of Health members who happen to be nurses, 2 of them, working very well there. But I said to Ruth, if we find out that we're falling behind, we will bring nurses back to help out with that, because that's a key component of this. So that's what we're going there, but everything seems to be going okay in that area. On the fiscal, or the money side, we received Friday afternoon our first installment on the CARES Act funds to cover us, which I wanted to make sure we got in this fiscal year, which we were told we would. So we will end up the year in a good shape there. Still have a lot of items going into FEMA and trying to work through that whole what's going to be state, what's going to be FEMA background there. But that has that was very hard. That was very nice to have that come in. So we have a lot of and Tom Walsh and all the department heads did a great job in getting that in getting that in. That covered things from masks that we gave out to overtime to administrative costs. So it worked out very, very well. Including, we had places for our first responders to go in case they were exposed, so they got away from their family, and it covered all of those items there. So great job by that group. Reopening of Town Hall has actually gone very well. First couple of days, we probably had 20 or 30 people, coming in. They are stopped by our greeter, and I know that we talked today a little about we should have the greeter position all year. So I think some people are actually happy about that. And that's worked out very well. Today we actually had 49 guests to Town Hall, most of them going to the town clerk's office to vote, a few going in to pay their water bill, but actually most went to the town clerk's office. Everybody coming into Town Hall is being logged in. This way, in case we do have anything that, anybody that get sick or what have you, we have a way of contacting people and letting them know. So that's worked very well. I think all of the precautionary measures are in place. And as we kind of work through this, as people come back, up to 50%, I just can't say enough about our town employees and how hard they've worked through this whole thing. So kind of very brief there. There's not a lot new there. I don't have the numbers on how many people went to the testing site on Friday, but when I get them, I'll share that with the board. So I'm pretty good on that one, Madam Chair.
Any questions for Steve on that part of his update? Seeing none from any of the counselors. The review of outdoor restaurant dining approvals.
Yes, that has worked out very well. Anecdotally, I've been out, and kind of walked around and saw a lot of them. I think that they look very good. They look very festive. I think people are thrilled to be out there. I do think that in talking with a lot of you or most of you, I am not, I think that it would be positive if we allowed the restaurants to come out 7 days a week to the street instead of going up Monday, going up Thursday, coming down on Monday. That'll really help the restaurants spread their costs over a longer time period. I do know that restaurants can open indoors, and but they're still going to be limited to how many seats. This will help them increase their capacity. I've also taken a look at the areas for Sakura and Public Kitchen. Those could be expanded a little bit. It would still leave about 4 parking spaces on that side in between them and the bread shop. That would help some of the other businesses over there. But, you know, frankly, I am not seeing a lot of traffic parking issues downtown right now. That may change in 6 months or in 6 weeks or in 6 days. But right now, I think that that looks pretty good. I also think that we could open the whole east side of Tuttle Street as an extension for whoever wants to come out and help those restaurants there. But all in all, this has been very positive. I haven't had the first day, had a little bit of concern, but other than that, I've had nothing but positive vibes from everybody. So I guess what I'd like to ask, if the council feels that way, that that we allow the business to come out 7 days a week, and that we look to expand that area for Sakura and Public Kitchen if they want, and allow all those restaurants to come out on the east side of Tuttle Street, again, if they want.
Steve, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Regard to the 7 days a week, have you heard from any businesses that are concerned about that or are happy about it?
Restaurants, I have, very happy if we can do it.
I'm sorry, retail.
Yeah,
I was
retail.
thinking the impact. on
Yeah,
retail.
I have not heard any concerns other than that first day from retail. But like I've said to the retail, a number of them, is that you want to come out to the sidewalk and what have you, you can, you should. I even talked to some about maybe they should change their hours. I think I might when the restaurants are open. This might give them a little bit more time to take advantage of that. But I have not heard from any of the other service industries out there. However, the nail salons weren't open until just today. So
Right.
I might have not even been on their radar screen.
Okay, thank you. Paul, I noticed your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Steve, you touched on it just then in regards to addressing the businesses. A question though, so if they're not a restaurant, let's just say Leaf and Ginger, we're not going to prevent them from putting something outside of their business to help them outdoors.
No, I think they probably already have, as a matter of fact.
So
Because they can come right out to the sidewalk and put it right up against their business, a couple of tables. Absolutely. I think they already have.
And we already were in agreement, I believe, at our last meeting that if the businesses wanted to bring their materials outside to the curb, we voted in favor of that.
Yep. They were all encouraged to do so. I've spoken to a number of them. Yep.
As long as they keep it in the footprint in front of their
as long as they leave a 36-inch pathway so people can get through for ADA, that's the only issue that I have. In most areas, they're okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mayo.
Jonathan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Mayo, for putting this together. I'm really supportive of the changes that you've suggested. I think, you know, for me, they alleviate a lot of the concerns that I had last week about the viability of some of the outdoor spaces that we had approved. And so I think this is a great step forward. I would agree with you. From a parking standpoint, I've kind of gone through downtown a number of times on a number of different days. And, you know, when the banks aren't open, when some of the medical providers downtown are doing more telehealth and in-person visits, you know, it's different. There really has not been, that I've observed, any challenge in terms of availability of parking. I mean, there are fewer people using the commuter rail, so that area of downtown, the places where we'd otherwise be ticketing, seem to have eased up. So I think this is a great approach. I think it is a really positive way of trying to help our businesses from a reopening standpoint. I think it'll create some vibrancy downtown, which I think both will help our businesses, and I think sort of help all of us, you know, feel better about how the reopening is happening and how we're able to use our public spaces again. So I appreciate the creativity that went here, and I'm fully supportive of the changes you've suggested.
I think it will also encourage maybe some of the restaurants that haven't come out, because I can understand you got to come out Thursday and come back on Monday or Sunday and get everything out. This, maybe you're not as apt to go and put nice lighting and plants and things like that out there. I think you'll note if you drove through today that we were a little slow today in maybe getting the barriers down in anticipation of maybe getting a positive outcome tonight. So I do thank you. I think it's a good thing to do.
Maureen.
Thank you. I just want to echo what was said. It was actually really nice driving around this weekend and seeing everyone outside, and everyone kind of made it unique. And up in my neck of the woods, Greenwood, a lot of the restaurants here were participating, and so it was actually and using town property, but also their own parking lot. So Dockside had their picnic benches out, which was really great. You know, I feel like I keep on saying this, but COVID pandemic has given us an opportunity to be a little creative. I talked to Steve today about kiosk at Town Hall, and we'll talk about that later.
I'm happy to have a good discussion about kiosks. And
I know. We'll get back to that. But something that I saw in other towns, which I think, you know, I remember Councillor Smith Galvin brought this up, is as parking downtown, maybe doing 1 or 2 spots that are takeout only spots. Because, you know, there's a lot of restaurants that are just doing takeout, and Charm, Zuzu, and just to, you know, give them 1 or 2 dedicated spots, as we've kind of taken up dedicated spots of takeout only. I feel like those, I think I've seen it in Reading, but just to kind of explore maybe 1 or 2 in the center, and maybe 1 in Greenwood too, for people that are just running in, as I know there's empty spots now, but as things get picked up, just to kind of have those quick spots for people to park, pick up, and take off.
Sure, yeah, I think we'll be reviewing parking all along in this whole entire. Thank you.
Ed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I bring my dog out for a walk a couple times a day because I live just off Main Street, and so I think I've had the dog walker eyes and ears on the downtown, and there's a real energy or vibrancy that you can pick up on. It's palatable as you get to that Thursday night, and it's nice. It's nice to hear, you know, kind of conversation and people laughing and things, you know, when you're walking downtown, and it's something that I think, you know, with the Envision Wakefield, the downtown revitalization project, that's part of our goal, to have that, you know, a more vibrant downtown, especially after 5 o'clock. To Councilor Chines' point, you know, when the banks are closed and some of the other places are closed and the parking is freed up. So I strongly support this, and I think it has been working well. And talking with business owners, they are encouraged by it. And even when we get into this, you know, this opportunity for a 25, 50, even 75% capacity, there's still a concern about people feeling comfortable being inside. And so, and I think we saw that at town meeting this past weekend. So being able to have that outdoor option for folks, I think is really important, you know, just from a psychological perspective too, for businesses. So for a lot of reasons, I think it makes much sense for all of us to support this going forward. And I think it's a good proposal, Steve. Thank you.
I think someone needs to mute, perhaps. I think when you mentioned about Envision, in the project coming at, it might be, is it David Shinney?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
All right, David,
Yes.
awesome.
Hey, we got him.
We love you, David, but thank you for muting. I think, you know, sitting around Jersey barriers and on the street gives the vibe. You can imagine when it looks so pretty and how everything is going to be beautiful, the excitement, because I was loving sitting on the street at Cafe Italia. It just was such a great feeling. Everyone was in a good mood. So I think it gives us a tiny snapshot of what is going to happen to the downtown when it is revitalized. So
I think the other thing that I'm seeing, and I think Councilor Dombrowski touched on it, anecdotally, you're seeing a lot more people walk, a lot more people ride their bikes. I think people are getting into the flow of this, kind of forced to do it. So I think it's fabulous.
Yeah.
So I would like, if it's all right with council, would like a council to approve the outdoor dining for 7 days a week, because that'll also affect the ability to extend their liquor licenses and the use of the street for that 7 days a week.
So moved.
Moved by Ed, second by
Second.
Paul. Any discussion, further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Yes for me. Ed?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Irene?
Yes.
6-0, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I have the correct agenda now. So item 8, Wakefield Community Partnership. You're up now, John.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'm hoping that everybody had the opportunity to just look over briefly what I wanted to talk about tonight. You know, with the summer schedule coming up, we were hoping to kind of obviously have a multi-organizational celebration in the downtown. And in order to get proper planning in place, we did want to see if it pleased the town council to perhaps frame it a little bit as to what we were trying to do, maybe develop some synergy and be able to move that forward. So the concept would be to have a 2-day event on a Friday and a Saturday, and we're hoping to start that at 6 p.m. and end it at 10 p.m. on Friday night. And then on Saturday, we would resume at 11:30 and go to 10 p.m. as well. So with that, we had proposed 3 different dates. If there aren't any questions on the first timing of this.
John, I was looking at the dates, and it's hard for me to envision whether these dates will work, especially the September one, if I'm not sure what the event looks like. Am I not following all the information you gave us? Do you see what I'm saying? I'm just concerned. You know, I can't imagine us having the type of events that we've had in the past for this season.
And that's part of the reason why that we wanted to talk about this tonight, right? You know, with the continuing COVID situation, pandemic, and things being in flux, you know, as a general rule, we have had some dates blocked off. Townspeople have been inside. Certainly merchants have been impacted adversely because of this. So we wanted a celebration, whether it be with masks or with some guidelines that may come out of the town council or the health department, as well as, you know, state and federal. But I think it really would be good for the town to have a celebration. It would be great for the groups to get together and be able to do something for the townsfolk as well as for the merchants. But obviously, you know, we would defer to you, and that's why we're here tonight.
And I guess, and I think this probably needs some more conversation. My concern with having a celebration and bringing people back out, I would never want to do anything to impact the businesses. And sometimes during some of the events, not all our businesses feel the love necessarily, just based on how we set things up. And I'm not saying that that's intentional, just by the nature of what we shut down, and you know, whether it's a salon or something else. So for me, I feel like we're still in this pandemic, so I just don't know how specific we can get, but I'll certainly let my other counselors ask some questions as well. I see Paul's hand up, and then Ed.
So thank you, Madam Chair. John, when you presented the information here, you gave us a request of potentially doing 2 days, which is something a little bit different than normal. Is it set in stone that it would be 2, or is the concept something that could only be done on 1? That's the first question.
I think that we could do a day. Nothing is set in stone, right? We needed to start somewhere, and we needed to have a discussion, I think, with the town council in order to understand how we can all rally and move forward together as organizations to do something for the townspeople and for the merchants. So no, nothing's set in stone. We're trying to throw out options here and get the discussion moving.
And I'm going to make the assumption, though, that this will all be hinged on what the state does and what our Board of Health comes up with as well, too. So if the governor feels that we can get to phase 4 and the numbers stay low, if he eases restrictions, the Board of Health, say, follows suit, the later you go into the year, the more viable of a chance that you might have. Is that what you're assuming?
Yes, and we realize that this is in a state of flux, but if we don't begin to speak about it, we have potentially losing the rest of the year. So,
and the last thing is that at the very bottom, and you didn't touch on it yet, but I'm going to bring it up now. You have various options for activity area. Is that something that again is very flexible? So typically it's usually from Lincoln Street to Yale on Main. Is that something that you're willing to, that you're considering shrinking to a smaller size where it doesn't impact as many businesses?
we would definitely do something like that. I took the 4 options, the 3 options that were suggested. We kind of looked at in the last one, potentially using the upper common. We certainly can condense on Main Street. And, I think the viability of having something and having some guidelines about what we're trying to do in that downtown area is definitely helpful to hear from the town council's perspective. But yes, very flexible.
Thank you, John. And one last question. In your second paragraph, you said multi-organizational activities. How many groups have been reached out to be a part of this as a united front? Do you know which organizations have already been reached out to?
So we've reached out to the West Side Social Club, Wakefield Main Streets, the Independence Day Committee, the Chamber of Commerce, and that's just a few. The Rotary we've reached out to, and there are a few others.
Very good. No, that's good. Okay, so there's some wiggle room in here for the councilors to make some decision one way or the other, I think. But I'd like to hear the rest of further comments from the council myself. So thank you, John. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Certainly. Ed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I probably speak for the entire council when I say that we're all in support of trying to promote business and bringing life into our downtown. No question about that. I think it's just a question of how we do it. Steve, I don't believe that we have Tom Walsh or Ruth Clay on the call, but I know that you've been working with them for a number of months. Can you give us a sense of kind of where their thinking is at in terms of any kind of bigger events or events of any sort being scheduled over the next several weeks or months?
Yeah, in the conversations, they have been very much wary of any events and really have said everything should go to next year, next calendar year. So look at in 2021, thinking about things that could happen in September and October, and worried about the spike that is coming and other places have seen. We've already had a lot of the walks that we hadn't canceled, frankly, cancel. The Buddy Walk, which has been here for years, and I think they have, well over 1,000 walkers. They canceled it for this year. That's in October because they were very concerned. I think that this is, first of all, wonderful group, wonderful ideas. I think whatever we can do to bring vibrancy down there is important. I think that maybe this is a little bit, and the council will meet again in 2 weeks, so there's still time. I'm suggesting that maybe we set up some sort of a meeting with John's group and Ruth and Tom Walsh to kind of see if we can flush this out a little bit more to bring it back with some sort of a recommendation. I personally am leaning towards the end of this time frame here, probably in the December time frame, but that's just my opinion.
I think if we could just get their input, that would really help to inform the council. And then, John, you said, Steve, in a couple weeks' time, basically, we would be able to know if that would still work within your timeline. I think we'd have some better clarity, which would help all of us.
I'm absolutely on board with that. The September date, to me, I can't imagine that being viable. And I don't want to rain on the parade, so to speak, John, but just from everything I'm hearing and from even schools and universities, you know, bringing the kids in early in August, not letting them leave. And then in Thanksgiving, sending them home because they feel like the second spike will align with the actual flu season in December. So I'm nervous about these dates, but I certainly think the first stop, as Steve said, would be to talk to John Smolinski in the Chamber of Commerce, probably a little, you know, really get them involved, but Ruth Clay and Tom Walsh, because they're the ones that I believe that our board, our council will follow. So those are my 2 cents. I see Jonathan also.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I certainly don't want to kind of repeat what others have said, you know, in terms of the need to, I think, put some thought into the specifics around this and what's, you know, kind of feasible from a public health perspective. With that being said, one of the things I would maybe ask us to think about and ask John, you and WCP to think through is, you know, as we talk about an event, does it need to be something of the scale of events that we've done in the past, you know, with the Stroll and with Festival Italia, or is there a smaller scale thing we could do? I mean, there may be an opportunity to do something that's appropriate from a public health standpoint that maybe even just involves, you know, having kind of a weekend where we shut down a section of Main Street so that people have the opportunity to, you know, to walk a little bit more. You know, there may be things that we can do that don't necessarily attract a large number of people congregating in one place or require the planning of a large scale event, but still might add just some, you know, opportunity for people to enjoy, you know, the resources that we have, you know, both downtown and by the lake and so forth. So I'm supportive of kind of this, having some work done on this offline and maybe coming back to the council, but I'd encourage us just to think about you know, whether the way that we've historically looked at a quote unquote event is the right approach for this, or if there are smaller scale things we could do that nonetheless would be kind of a welcome diversion for folks in town.
Yeah, John, I would second that. I was talking to Steve Mayo, I think, about this. So when I'm picturing events, I'm picturing the events we typically have. Those are the ones that scare me a little bit during these extraordinary times. You know, for any of the townies that are watching and listening, the sidewalk sale was one of my favorite experiences as a kid. And it's when all the businesses would come out to the sidewalk and you would get your little pocket money and you would go buy clothes, you could get ice cream, you'd go to eat. We all love the sidewalk sale. I think it might've been twice a year. Steve, you remember, right?
I do, but I'm older than you, so I remember. Yes.
Just a little, just a smidgen. But it's exactly what Jonathan is saying. It's something that does not necessarily attract people from out of town, because I don't know that we want that right now, crowd-wise. But you know, shutting down part of Main Street and really engaging all the businesses. So I would, you know, in talking to these other groups, maybe like we've done, thinking outside the box and thinking of new things, as Maureen has said. I don't think we're saying, you know, no, absolutely not, but it has to be in conjunction with Ruth Clay and her team and Tom Walsh as well.
Honestly, I remember the sidewalk sales. It's not just for people who grew up here, it's people who grew up next door as well. And
Linfield would come creeping over to Wakefield sidewalk sale. Well, that would be fine, I guess.
That bookstore I would find great stuff at that bookstore. So.
Oh, I remember the bookstore.
As long as they bring money.
Yeah. Paul, is your hand raised again?
Yes, thank you. So I just want to make clear of one item, because when you mentioned that you run it by the chamber, it's not a chamber event. The focus on this right now is that it's supposed to be a multi-organizational activity. So the chamber's invited to participate already. Not that they're going to have a say on yes or no.
I'm not telling, if I said run by, I apologize for those words. I think the chamber should have a very large voice. They're working.
I think Main Street should have a very large voice, and the EPC should as well too. But that's a different story.
But our concerns, my concern is for businesses and allowing businesses to get back on their feet. So all I'm just saying is engage that group, John, and I imagine you would. But really critically, Ruth Clay and Tom Walsh have to be I
think that's a very valuable point that you made there, Madam Chair, that the health department and the emergency department should be involved in this at the minimum, that they have to be involved in this, because it's them feeling safe that there's something forward could go on.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. John, I know we've thrown a lot at you, but this was a first conversation.
No, and that's what it was about. And I think, you know, talking to the health department as well as, you know, Tom and safety is obviously something that's important to do. I appreciate Mr. Mayo suggesting it, and maybe getting a quick meeting that we could potentially come back and discuss this a little further in 2 weeks would be greatly appreciated.
Sure. Absolutely. If you meet with those groups and then want to come back and revisit with us, that sounds great.
Thank you so much for your time, all of you.
Absolutely. Thank you, John.
Okay.
Item 9, Economic Development Council. So I'm going to throw this to Ed. This was your baby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to give an update, I know we've talked about this a few times now. So I think we're finally at a point where we can take action on it. I want to thank Vice Chair Smith-Galvin and Councilor Chines, with whom I've been in communication on this. There have been some revisions made to the proposal. It's included in the packet, so I won't go into all the details. So you're certainly relative to it, because it's available for everyone to review. But the bottom line is this would be an 9-member body made up of folks from various disciplines and backgrounds and experiences, a diverse group of people, with the expectation that this would be a council that could work synergistically with the economic development, community and economic development director position once it is filled, certainly. And it allows us for an opportunity to have members of our community, be it residents or be it someone who has a stake in a Wakefield business, to lend some of their expertise and guidance to us, and hopefully make some connections for us as we try to restore and further build up our Wakefield economy. So I think it's a really good opportunity for us to do just that. The scope of the charge for this council is deliberately broad, with the understanding that it could go in a lot of different directions after they meet, depending on what the composition of the council looks like, depending on what they identify as the emerging needs are, depending on what the director has to offer up in terms of his or her priorities. And ultimately, we hope that this council, in conjunction with the director, will also be able to come before the town council to offer us some suggested guidance in terms of policies that would be business friendly and help to support our Wakefield economy. The council would also have 1 or 2 town council liaisons in the discretion of the chair to be appointed annually, and that would be obviously a part of the process as well. But I do think that this is an opportunity for us to have a rather autonomous group that brings together some different thinkers and some different contributors than we've had in other groups, and be able to work again in a really collaborative way with the new director position that has been funded at town meeting, so we're able to accomplish that. So again, I want to thank Vice Chair Smith-Galvin and Councilor Chines for your work on this as well.
So Ed, and thank you for your initial work, and also for Jonathan and Julie for giving you a lot of excellent points. I know you had a good meeting and there were some revisions made. What would tonight's vote be simply, if passed, the formation of the council, and then we would move to advertise or recruit, or, you know, in the next meeting perhaps, or this is just the formation?
Well, I would say that this would be the formation. We can advance to advertise now as well if we so choose. I do think that we'd be best served by having that as a very deliberate process. And so I wouldn't say, you know, apply within, you know, 14 or 21 days. I do think that even if we were to advertise, and we may just want to do it as one vote now, but I think we want to give ourselves, you know, several weeks to be able to make sure we get the word out and really be targeted, so we have a really robust applicant pool, because I think the ultimate success of this council is going to be based on that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think having the council form tonight with a vote, and then really thinking about how we want to, what kinds of folks we want on this, who to reach out to ask to apply. So would you, again, giving you a bit of the nod because this was your idea, would you be okay with voting for the creation of the council tonight, and then perhaps at the next meeting formulating how we recruit or you know, advertise?
Sure. I don't know that it makes much of a difference. I do think if once we have it posted out there, it might be a little bit easier to be able to direct people to it. But again, I would suggest that even if we had a deadline set, it'd be a bit further out, and then with the understanding we may want to extend that deadline depending on where we are in terms of recruitment. So if I had a preference, it might be to form and then at least allow for, you know, posting, but understanding that we're not going to be filling this in the next few meetings, presumably.
Got it. That makes sense. Good. Thank you for that clarification. Paul, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to thank Ed, Julie, and Jonathan for taking the existing document and restructuring it to what we have before us now. I have one simple question. Other than that, I think I can support this. With the vote of town meeting in the soon to be promoted issuance of candidates for the directorship, looking at this now, how do you see this council associating itself with the economic development director? The director answers to Steve according to the makeup, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Ann?
That's correct.
Okay, so would the Economic Development Council be set up the same way, say, the Advisory Board of Public Works is set up for the DPW, where they would work to put forward the ideas for economic growth for someone that is schooled in it as the director is? I'm just curious of how the two roles are going to intertwine. Who's going to be at the helm? Is it going to be the director, or is it going to be the council?
Of course, it's going to be the director. I'm going to speak over Ed, I assume. If someone who's an employee who's directly focused on that job that we've hired would be at the helm, is answering to Steve. I think the council, if put together thoughtfully, will be a wonderful complement that the director could use to, you know, help him. Perhaps the council could help him gather information about businesses, or but of course I with an employee, they would be the point.
I think
okay, and I'm asking a legitimate question because I'm looking at this, and this again was developed before the vote of town meeting, and I just wanted to make sure that it's understood that the director, when that time comes, and hopefully it'll be before November. That's wishful thinking, but I'm hoping that it'll be before November. That the two groups or the individual and the groups can actually work with one another to come up with some great ideas for us to implement in the near future. So again, if what you're saying is the way it will be, then I don't really have an issue with it now, unless one of my fellow counselors does. But I think I'm okay with this as it stands now.
If I may, Madam Chair, just to explain that point. I think perhaps the best way to think about it, Paul, is this is a similar structure to maybe like the Clean Lake Committee, in that Bill Renaud, our town engineer, is actually at the helm of that committee, and they work collaboratively with some town employees, and they're also a bit of a standalone entity. This absolutely would be a situation where we'd have the director being at the helm and working with this, I'll call it, support council. There wouldn't be like a friction. It would be they'd all be on the same page, and they would be advancing the goals as identified by the director. So, but I think the Clean Lake Committee, as we're seeing, that was formed in September, and they came before us last time already, and they've done some really impressive work. And that is a similar structure, Paul, in that Bill Renaud is at the helm there, a town employee, and he's working with them.
No, I appreciate that, Mr. Dombrowski. I really do. I mean, I'm looking at this. It is a significant change to a multiple of points on this. I think the three of you did a great job of restructuring it. You addressed a lot of issues on this right now. So with that being said, I'm fine, Madam Chair.
Excellent. I see Jonathan's, Jonathan, did your hand?
I just had a question for something that Councilor Giannaco had said initially, but I think he spoke to it again, so I'm all set.
Excellent. Okay. I don't believe I see any other counselors' hands up. So with that, I think we can have a motion to create the Economic Development Council. Oh, did someone say something? No. To create the Economic Development Council, and at some point put out advertisement for it. Some point in the near future. We're not putting a hard and fast date on that. Does that sound okay, Ed?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. I mean, if we wanted to at least begin to advertise now and put out a
Sure.
due date, some time from now, I don't know, if you'd rather do that, or at the next meeting we would just vote to advertise.
No, we can move to advertise as long as the advertisement's all set. You could work with Sherry on that, and we could put a date out, perhaps even, to August or September.
Oh yeah, I think that would be appropriate, because I think we want to really spend a lot of time collectively recruiting the best people we can.
Madam Chair, what is our schedule going forward for our meetings? Are we still on summer schedule?
I believe so, unless someone has an issue, someone is back to work and can't make the 6 o'clock time.
No, I'm talking about how many meetings are we going to have in July and August? Are we only having one meeting in July, one meeting in August?
As of now, yes. If we need another meeting, we can always add one.
Very good, thank you.
I mean, Madam Chair, I'd be happy with even saying that, yeah, by end of August applications, or even after Labor Day applications
Sure.
be submitted. I think that would be fine.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, so I need a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ed, seconded by Paul. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Anne, yes. Ed?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, 6-0. Thank you, and thank you all for your hard work on that. Next we have is appointments and personnel. The first appointment we have is to the Conservation Commission to fill an unexpired 3-year term ending April 30th, 2023. And Sherry, my understanding is we have only one applicant.
You are correct, yes.
Okay. And the applicant is Mr. James Luciani. He had previously been on Concom. Any discussion? Or since we have only one applicant, would someone like to move that Mr. Luciani be appointed to Concom?
I'll move for the appointment of Mr. Luciani onto Concom.
Second.
Seconded by Jonathan, moved by Ed, seconded by Jonathan. Any discussion? No. Okay. Roll call vote. Myself, yes. Ed?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
And Maureen?
Yes.
Okay. So Mr. Luciani will be appointed to Concom. Second one is student appointments to the Clean Lake Committee as non-voting members with terms to be discussed. And I know that we have at least one of the students, Giovanni Luciani. I know his mom. And I don't know if we have any of the other. Is Alyssa Toppy? No.
No.
Okay. So is Giovanni the only one you can see, Sherry, who might be here?
That is correct. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining the meeting. So Sherry, if you could, we all have the names before us in our packet, and I believe the recommendation from the Clean Lake Committee was to appoint all students.
Right.
If someone could make that motion.
I move we appoint all students to the Clean Lake Committee.
Thank you, Julie.
Second.
Seconded by Ed. Any discussion on that? No. Okay. Roll call vote. Myself, yes. Ed.
Yes.
Jonathan.
Yes.
Julie.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Maureen.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Congratulations, students, and Giovanni, you're here. Okay. So we've done that. 10E. Sorry if am I echoing? No.
Somebody is.
I know. It shouldn't be me. I'm on the same. Okay. We need to authorize town clerk to advertise, fill an unexpired 5-year term on the Wakefield Housing Authority Board through April 30th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Paul, second by Jonathan's going to second that one.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Myself, yes. Ed?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
6-0 in favor for Betsy to advertise. The F, so item 10F is we are going to table that and put that on for a further meeting. It was to fill an unexpired appointment on Human Rights Commission. So we're going to table that and come back and discuss that at either the July or the August meeting. Okay. Steve, fiscal year 2020?
Yes, fiscal year 2020. In your packet, and although the council does not vote on the reserve fund transfers, I do like to share them with you so you have a flavor of what they are. And this year, $174,000 is not bad. It's been less than in previous years, so I'm kind of happy about that. And on the legal and professional services part, there's $38,850 for the Butler Ave lawsuit. I will tell you that we have also received some money in on that through the insurance company, which is nice as well. Legal books and publications for the town's legal library, $6,800. Vocational schools. This is always an issue with vocational schools. We don't know the numbers until after we set the budget, and 3 additional students stayed and maintained themselves at Essex North. So we have a little bit more, 47,000 there. Unemployment, interestingly enough, we have not received a bill unless we received one today, which I don't think so, Sherry? From the state?
Nothing today. No.
The state has not billed us for 3 months for unemployment costs, which I guess is good, but Although we have money in that account, we thought we'd put 10,000 in there just in case. We have not laid off anybody, so that should roll back to the general fund. And for an accounting thing, it should be for this fiscal year, obviously. Board of Appeals, more for the cost of advertising, and that's an estimate that we make. If we have more hearings, we pay out more in advertising, but we also charge more. So this is an accounting side on the expense side. Professional medical, $5,300. That is because for the police officers we hired, those medical, we have every employee has a medical exam before they come on board. And for police and fire, they have some additional portions of that exam that add a little bit more money. General insurance, some of the additional vehicles and slightly higher than the budgeted rates. Animal control salary, that is for additional coverage due to mandatory training, not mandatory hiring, which was in your package. We have to have coverage when there's training going on. The state does require some training. Workers' comp insurance, costs associated with the higher than projected payroll because we had an audit and our workers' comp is based on payroll costs. I will say that one, I guess, good thing about this year, about the COVID-19 issue is that a lot of employees have been working from home. We haven't had too many workers' comp claims in this since March. So think about all of the teachers that aren't coming in. So we won't have any there that we have to cover. So our rates will go down, hopefully. And Medicare, again, due to slightly higher than estimated payrolls. So the FinCom will be voting on this Thursday night to wrap up the year, but I'm very actually pleased about this. We budgeted $300,000 for this account, and so we will return about $126,000 to the general fund. Are there any questions on that, Madam Chair?
Yep.
Jonathan.
Madam Chair, thank you. Very, very quick question. On the law library, I thought those were costs that we had budgeted every year. Did we exceed what we usually spend? Or?
Yeah, we do, but I don't think we do, but I don't think we've been budgeting enough. So maybe we should really increase that. But this is ours. This will stay with us.
Yep.
Remember, there's always a discussion about this at FinCom, as you recall.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions by any of the counselors? Seeing none, I think we're all set on that, Steve?
Great. Yep. All set. There's no vote necessary.
Great.
Just for the end of fiscal year 2020 wrap up, I think we're going to end, I know we're going to end in very good shape. I've been going over the numbers with Kevin Gill. This is his favorite time of year because he gets to kind of look at all the numbers as they come in, although we look at them all the time. Many departments are returning funds to the town, which is very important for us to maintain our reserves. We did continue to see very good income this year, with the exception of meals and hotel taxes. Building fees have continued, town halls continued to bring in fees. So I'm anticipating a very good end of the year wrap up for fiscal year 2020, and that's only a few days away. So I think it's a great job done by the town employees. We also received, as I mentioned earlier, the COVID-19 funds on Friday. So we don't have to worry about doesn't look like we'll even have to dip into that deficit account that we had set up through the Department of Revenue. Just so you know, going forward in fiscal year 21, the Department of Revenue did give us some guidance today or yesterday that for the months of July and August, which is next fiscal year, the state is going to be forwarding us 1/12 of Chapter 70 funds and 1/12 of the unrestricted local aid, plus some of the other smaller accounts, 1/12 of last year's budget. So that to me is actually, if we're level funded last year from the state, that would be quite good for us because we were anticipating, probably a 10% cut or more. So that's where it's going right now. And a lot of that has to do with what happens in the federal government, but I thought that was a little bit of positive news. So we may be looking a little bit better. So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Item number 12, the donation. Library seeks approval to accept and expend a gift or gifts to the library in the amount of $805 from various donors with thanks. Can I please get a vote? Motion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Move, Jonathan.
Second.
Seconded, Ed. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Myself, yes. Ed, yes. Okay.
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Yes. Breaking up. Yes.
Yeah. Paul?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
6-0 all set. Town warrant. Jonathan?
Yep. Just briefly, I signed on May 27th. Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm breaking up.
I don't think, let me mute myself. If it's me, I don't know why it's happening all of a sudden.
All right. So just briefly, on May 27th, I signed warrants. So we have in the agenda warrants 41 through 47. What you'll notice in the summary sheet is given sort of that, town hall hasn't been fully staffed. We've actually combined some of the warrants. So you see some warrants are blank, effectively were for $0 in dollars were put in the warrants before and after that. But nonetheless, warrants 41 through 47 were signed by me on May 27th. Details in the packet, about $13 million there, mostly debt service, enterprise transfers, and the usual expenses, plus payroll and benefits. Any questions that anyone has?
Excellent. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Announcement. So these are any issues anyone wants to talk about to bring to the table. Jonathan, I see your hand up.
Thank you again. Just briefly wanted to mention, and I know we were all really thrilled to see this, that the home rule petition for our senior property tax exemption that we passed at town meeting, like forever ago, was finally passed by both houses of the legislature and approved by the governor, which is great news. And just wanted to, really express our appreciation to the legislative delegation. Senator Lewis, Representative Lippert-Garabedian, who I think was working on this from like the day she was sworn in, and Representative Wong for moving that forward. I also did want to recognize Victor Santaniello for really kind of being the inspiration behind that idea and coming up with that. And I know he, like many of us on the council, has been sort of berating the members of the legislative delegation as well about getting that through. So really just wanted to express sort of our appreciation for him and the great work that he does. I think this is a really innovative program, and certainly something that, we may be a trailblazer for other communities in the Commonwealth going forward.
Great. Thank you very much. Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, Steve stole my thunder on one item. Jonathan just stole my item on another one, but that's okay. I'm just going to add a little bit. One more congratulatory on the HH 475. Paul Broder, Representative Broder, was the initiator of that bill, and Donald Wong stepped in upon the request of Mr. Mayo to continue Mr. Broder's efforts once he became mayor. So a thank you to Mr. Broder for his work in getting that done as well, too. Madam Chairwoman, I have one issue that I would like to have either the school department address or the town address. And this was a matter that my wife stumbled upon in one of her daily walks. When you go up Hemlock Street, the extra parking lot that is across from Landigan Field, I'm going to recommend that is closed down permanently until school starts. Someone's abusing that to no end. Trash all over the floor. They're spraying pornographic images onto the ground. That's not a hangout, and they're doing donuts. You can see tire tracks up there. That's not a place for the kids to be hanging out. And I don't know if it's our community or another community, but I'm going to recommend that this board looks into putting a chain across the entrance and the entrance and exit, and just prohibiting cars from going in there. Let them use somewhere else. It's becoming a hangout. There was trash littered throughout that whole area. and it looked like McDonald's trash. I'm not sure how we can address it other than that, because we can't keep sending the forestry department or the DBW up there to clean up the mess. They already have enough to do. Again, that's just a recommendation from me as far as that is concerned. I'm going to hold off on anything else for now until I get a little bit more information on a couple of other matters. But thank you, Madam Chair. That would be something. Oh, I know what it was. Oh, no, that's not now. Sorry. I'll hold off. Thank you.
I'll talk to Steve and maybe have some drive-bys with the police for doing it before the ultimate of closing it down. But yeah, we'll look into that. Someone will look into that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Maureen.
So I have a couple of things to say. One, I don't know if we've used this forum to thank the moderator and Steve and everyone who made our town meeting successful. So I know it was six hours. Did we make 6 hours? But close. 6 hours, and better turnout than we normally have usually, and the social distancing and everyone wore masks, and I thought the speakers, thank you WCAT, thank you DPW, who was breaking down things at the end. I for one, when we come at this again in the fall, I kind of liked a Saturday town meeting, so something that we should talk about instead of multiple nights, because as I was reminded, that probably would have taken 3 nights if we had done it during our regular schedule. So I just want to thank everyone, particularly, I thought there was some really great conversation. Really excited for the funding of the Economic Development Director position, and as we approve the council today, to partner with the council and take the lead on that, and really help our businesses bounce back from COVID and do everything we can. So I just wanted to say that while we were at town meeting, just to give everyone an update that the farmers market had their grand opening. I checked in, they said it was really successful. They want me to tell everyone that they will be open again this Saturday, and they've met with the Board of Health, and the Board of Health has allowed them to sell food live. So they were doing pre-orders. They're still encouraging people to pre-order, but check out their website, wakefieldfarmersmarket.org. And a lot of us couldn't go because of town meeting, but we will be there this coming Saturday. I mentioned this briefly to Steve, and I'm just going to share everyone. We are members of the Mass Municipal Association, and they had a great article about, again, people being creative during this time. And they had a town hall. I don't remember what town it was, Steve, but they had a town hall that set up a little kiosk for drive-through at town hall. And so we had 50 people show up today, according to Steve earlier, and they all, made appointments and walked into the building. But imagine having a drive-through where they could get help. So would love to work with Steve and other folks about thinking creatively about how we continue to give great customer service in this time. 2 other things, Steve, as we were talking about people being more out and about, and we've heard that it's a very European style feel downtown, more people riding their bikes. And so I've actually had 2 inquiries about bike rail trail updates, and I don't know what the updates are. So maybe next meeting, if we could get an update, that would be great. Sorry, the other thing just to tell is the community gardens are officially open for business. People have already planted stuff, including the Girl Scouts who have a plot. So if anyone can give me hints about what grows really well, let me know, because I will be there later this week planting some stuff. And the last thing I wanted to say about town meeting, and we talk about some of the great stuff that we do. We, as a council, created a youth council a couple of meetings ago, and members of the youth council came to town meeting and observed from where voters could not. And I texted the chair and the co-chair, the 2 of them came and watched town meeting and lasted for hours. And I love that we appointed some young members to another committee, and I'm really glad that we're doing that, and it's building the next generation of volunteers in our town. So that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Julie.
just want to remind everybody that now we're through town meeting. The town election is tomorrow, open from 10 to 2 at the Galvin Middle School. I know many people have voted early, which has been a wonderful program overseen by Betsy Sharon, our town clerk. But you still can vote. And I believe you could even go in after those hours if you had an appointment to vote at town hall. So if you can't make those hours, call Betsy and see what accommodations can be made. And good luck to our colleagues who are running. Secondly, I've spoken with Steve about looking into diversity, equity, inclusion training, given some of the events, not just of the last couple of weeks, but frankly, you know, over my tenure here, there's been things, and you know, some could argue maybe even this weekend there were some things that could have benefited from diversity, equity, and inclusion training. So I know MAPC and MMA and other municipal organizations have some really great content, and I would love for us to look into that. Finally, Anne and I received a letter from the Friends of the BB Library, and I'm going to just read the more salient parts, but they have asked that members of the town council recognize Jody Sherman for her work to the town of Wakefield. As many of us know, she has been tireless in organizing the book sale and many, many things around the library. I'm just going to read two of the paragraphs quickly and then ask Madam Secretary to perhaps enter it into our minutes so that everybody can see it at the next meeting. Jody Sherman drove the book sales growth for over 20 years, from its small origins to the massive events of recent years, fundraising on the order of $200,000 for the BB. She stood at the helm, acting as caretaker, primary organizer, and sage of the books, which was formerly stored in her garage. Training numerous volunteers, tirelessly supervising during the long hours of setup and breakdown, as well as managing the sale itself, Jody's energy and dedication were inspiring to generations of volunteers and will be sorely missed. Jody's understandably decided to step back after extended service living the book sale, and members of the Friends and community would like to express our gratitude and ask for her to be recognized by the town. We'll enter that into the minutes.
And we can enter the letter into the minutes as well. That was sent. It was a lovely letter talking about all that she's done. So thank you so much for your service. Julie, are you all set?
I am done. Thank you.
Okay, Ed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to recognize, with respect to the home rule petition, Steve Mayo. Steve, I think we were on Beacon Hill about a year ago when you were invited to speak on this. And so I know that Victor has played an integral role. Steve, as have you. Paul Broder, as was mentioned, was really instrumental as well. And then Representative Wong taking over after Paul became mayor, and then obviously Caitlin Brigadian and Senator Lewis. So thank you all for that. And it's exciting because it's a good opportunity for some economic relief for our seniors who really need it the most. So I really am looking forward to that, and I'm proud to have supported. Also, I wanted to again thank the Public Safety Building Reassessment Committee. That was a committee that I had chaired and we had all appointed, and I am incredibly proud of the work that that committee did as a whole. 16 members who really, I think, made an impact, and the vote at town meeting reflected that. It was even more resounding for the public safety building this time versus last time it came before in 2018, and I think that's a real reflection of the work of that committee. So I thank each and every one of those committee members for their dedication. And finally, as has been mentioned, tomorrow is election day, and I do encourage everyone to exercise your right to vote. But I did just want to take a moment. This is a break point for me in that it's the end of my first term as a town councilor, and I wanted to just extend my sincere thanks to Wakefield for giving me this opportunity for these last 3 years. I've done everything in my power to earn your trust and your confidence, and to make decisions that are in the best interest of this town. And I appreciate all the discussions that I've had with folks over these last 3 years. I appreciate all the opportunities that we've had to be able to make an impact on our local community. And I'm really looking forward to the 3 years ahead and the positive impact that we can all continue to make on our town. So with that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Steve, do you have anything to add to announcement?
I just want to add that really want to thank Tom Walsh, our Emergency Management Director, Ruth Clay, and WCAT making town meeting happen, and particularly the guys and gals at DPW. I mean, they did such a fabulous job in setting up inside and outside. And I mean, I felt that we did the best that we could. And, you know, I was going down there a lot. And then all of a sudden, I think Thursday afternoon, I went down and said, oh my, it was all set up and ready to go. And of course, Madam Chair, for your support and coming down there, making sure that went well as far as, and as well as the town clerk and the moderator. So I do want to highlight that. Interestingly enough, we had 252 people that attended town meeting, which was, other than April of 2019, when there were 263, it was one of the larger attendances we've had, you know, in 3 or 4 years. So really, I guess people felt safe and people came down, and we still moved the town forward. So thank you to the townspeople. Thank you for everybody for setting that up. And I think it was a good day for Wakefield. Thank you.
It absolutely was a good day for Wakefield. And I was amazed that every single person wore a mask. I thought we might have a few outliers, but it was really great to see everyone respect each other in that way. And repeating thanks for the amount of work that went into putting that together. And I agree with Maureen. I think we really need to look at having a Saturday, letting that perhaps be viable. In doing it in a way that we can have coffee and donuts, or, you know, people need to eat for 6 hours and take a little break. So I definitely, that's on a table. A couple of things. I just want to extend condolences, really heartfelt condolences to Christine and Dick DeFelice for the loss of their daughter, Elizabeth. Christine is a vocal member. I probably don't agree with her on much of what she says at town meeting, but I appreciate that she shows up, and I appreciate that she takes part in making this town run. And I really want to send heartfelt condolences from all of us for the loss of their daughter, she and Dick. With regards to the liaisons, I've talked with a lot of folks, and I just want to announce, and we'll do this, you know, this doesn't need a vote, but just so people can know, and that we've made some shifting in liaisons. Everyone is on board. Everyone has requested this. The folks that they're working with are really happy with these. So for Maureen, she will be the Police Department's liaison, Board of Health, Library, and Human Rights Commission. Ed, I would suggest you being the liaison for the Economic Council that we just created. Jonathan for ACE, the schools, and something different, and we won't be finished this meeting. I think we should have liaisons to some of our biggest committees, just so we know what's going on. So Jonathan is going to be the liaison for the planning board. Julie will take over my role as just keeping the committees kind of in check and informing them of what's going on and making sure that they're happy, as well as Environmental Sustainability Committee and the Gas and Light Department. I will stick with fire for this year. Peter is sticking with DPW. There are some committees that probably need liaisons, like Concom and ZBA, and we can talk about that perhaps at the next meeting. And Paul, I just realized I didn't have you, Donaco. You and I can talk, and we can.
We can talk, Madam Chair.
Absolutely, and I know that you graciously suggested that Maureen would be great for the police department, and so I just need to circle back. Sorry about that. Let's see. Oh, and Jonathan, would you like me to talk to our fellow counselors about giving up warrants, or are you happy to continue with that?
I'm certainly happy to continue with it, but if someone wanted to do it, they are more than welcome to it. I'm comfortable either way.
I can't imagine who would want to do that, but
it's a very coveted position, Jonathan.
I know. Yeah, it's all yours if you want it.
In perpetuity.
But that can change on the fly.
I was going to say the finance team at Town Hall does a great job, so it's I've got the easy part of that gig.
Excellent. And with that, I think we're good. Just under the 3-hour mark, but we got an awful lot done. So thank you all, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Jonathan, seconded by Ed. All in favor? Ann, yes. Ed?
Yes.
Jonathan? Yes.
Yes.
Paul? Maybe?
Yes.
and Julie.
Yes.
Thank you, WCAT. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you at our next meeting on July 13th, I believe. Got it. Okay. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.